call the meeting to order. Ask Nicole to take roll call, please.
Kroll,
Here.
Aubrey Montgomery,
Here.
McBurney,
Here.
Rosendahl,
Here.
Odie is absent.
Yep, Pat's indicated she's running late. She's had car problems. She'll be here as soon as she can, so. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Roll second by Carver Montgomery. Discussion, roll call.
Kroll,
Yes.
Aubrey Montgomery,
Yes.
Rosendahl,
Yes.
McBurney,
Yes.
All right, turning to item 3. AJ, I'll turn it back to you
Yes.
to kick us off again.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for joining us again tonight. We have to finish up items on our review session, and we left off at finance and records. So if you look under, da-dun, get my right tab,
GG 11.
GG 11, thank you. Had the right,
Guy in the end.
Oh, right.
yeah,
It's like I was paying attention on Saturday.
thank
I'm
you.
your favorite department, right?
Good.
There we go.
Yeah.
Nikki knows what I'm about.
So, Nikki, if you want to kick it off, please.
Absolutely. My staff here, I have Addison Riepkes, who are Assistant Finance Director. Vivian Luna, back here is my accountant one. We are a whopping department of 5 people. But we don't have a lot of new things in the budget. The only thing that we have addition, so we, this fiscal year, and actually just last week, have gone through the installation of our new PFX Engagement. It's a software that will help us organize our audit. It's the same one that our auditors use. So we bought it this year with excess savings that we had so that we could get it in the door and get it set up before audit. But we only bought 1 license. So the only thing additional in here is to buy 2 additional licenses so that Addison, I, and Vivian can all have independent logins so that it makes the purpose of having separate review processes. So it's just the additional 2 licenses so that we could actually use it for this year's audit instead of just installing it. Other than that, we do not have a lot in our budget that is new and different. This does support the CPE credits that both Addison and I, we are both licensed CPAs, so we have to maintain 120 hours of continuing education every 3 years. So that does maintain all of us, and one of us will go to a national conference each year. We alternate. If I'm not doing graduations for children, Addison goes in my stead, so he'll be attending this, the one here in May. Happy to answer any questions, but we don't have a lot of excitement in our budget. We just nose to the grindstone. We don't do anything fun and new.
We like you guys not having too much excitement.
We get to move, like that's in a couple of weeks here. That's going to be crazy for us. So it'll be nice to help in our own area.
I was going to ask with the future considerations one, what kind of tech do you see as like kind of a first priority that you would want to look at?
I think it's just, we've made a lot of strides in getting to, we all have laptops now, so we can work from home. Each of my staff has 1 day a week that if it works out, great, we can work from home. Probably a lot of it is in this PFX engagement type thing is trying to bring our, we could go electronic for an actual software like for our CIP prep. There is stuff for all of our accounting leases and the subscription-based IT. For those of you that had to sit through the audit committee, it's a whole process of valuing what those cost. There's a lot of software associated with that. We don't have a volume of that to make it cost beneficial. And there's a lot of stuff in the debt area that, and I've previewed all of it, but it won't pro forma yet. So I'm like, this doesn't do me any good if it doesn't, if I can't use it to forecast, I already have spreadsheets created for tracking what we've got. So I'm a hard sell on some of those if it's really costly for the benefit that we would get out of it. But being a small department, there are definitely areas that we could continue to look at. But it's mostly a capacity issue of having money and time to implement and make it worthwhile. So we're pretty conservative on where it makes sense. The PFX engagement, both Addison and Vivian used this software when they were on the private side. And our current auditors use it, so there should be a lot of efficiency there. And then we can use that, not necessarily to create like the budget document or the CIP document, but help us keep our work papers organized and electronic instead of my, you know, I think you were acknowledging my beautiful binder. We go through 5 of these per audit. So there's a lot of paper that we could start to eliminate some of that.
Awesome, thanks.
Anything else?
Okay, city clerk, that will be on GG 23. Nicole, that's right, you get to go to the lectern, make sure the microphone is on, young lady, and address the mayor and the council, name and address first.
Mayor and council members, not a lot of changes. Probably took me longer to walk over here. No, no staffing changes or anything in the clerk budget, but I did want to acknowledge my appreciation for our deputy clerk position that was new in this current budget. The addition of that's going really well. It's been very helpful, not only on the clerk side, but it is increasing the capacity on the payroll management side. Any changes that we make, of course, every time the salary schedules change, all of that is a build that Elisa takes the brunt of that, and she does a fantastic job. So really happy with that. So I'd highlight two items primarily in the line 27 for data processing, an increase in the DocuSign account. We are finding more and additional use cases for the digital signature, whether they're internal documents or whether they're things like the uplift waiver, in addition to our council documents and contracts and those types of things. The data on that shows that even with our current lower rate that we're using it, about 5,500 pages, according to the way they calculated it, 750 pounds of carbon emissions, whatever that's worth. So interesting to see that, the way they compute that. But, and then Laserfish Forms implementation is the other big addition there, that would allow us to move some of our licensing and permitting onto an electronic or a paperless platform and increase efficiencies as we try and get rid of the boxes that are in storage for our historical documents. So. All of that.
Good times.
Yes.
I was going to ask with the record retention stuff, is that more staff time lift, or are there any like actual dollars and cents costs for that?
For what's in the budget would be the implementation hours with the vendor to help us build that the first time. Yep. And then it would be staff trained. A lot of the licensing is already existing as some other departments have started to use that platform. So this is just the implementation piece to build it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Legal, this is our services that we contract with,
Page.
I'm sorry, GG 27, just right behind clerk. These are legal services that includes the city attorney. We also have monies built in there for the additional legal consultants that we're going to have to do the franchise. And that is in 25, I believe, that we have a new franchise that expires with our folks at Mid-Am, the franchise agreement. One of the considerations that you'll have at that point in time, and I suspect that we'll be having more discussions throughout the year on it, is that whether or not you want to implement a franchise fee on gas and electric. And so by code, city council can establish a fee up to 5%. And so then there's a caveat there that if you have a local option sales tax, that the local option sales tax, you have to pick one or the other that apply to the electrical and the gas supply. So, pardon me, local option sales tax now is in place. And if you choose to do a franchise fee, then that is removed, that component of it is removed from the charges that you have for the, you had to pick one or two. You can't have them both that apply to the electrical and gas output. So we've talked about it in-house at the staff, and there's been some preliminary. And again, as we get closer to that, we have some numbers to share with you, but obviously you're not at that point, not at the point yet. But again, it'll be, local option sales tax in place, you're already collecting that money. It's just substituting one for the other. One of the big differences with the franchise fee, it applies to all users. So if you're a user if you're a not-for-profit, if you're a school, if you're a church, if you use the facilities, gas and electric, which everybody does in the city, then they're subject to the franchise fee. So it's just something to keep in mind when we get into those discussions. You don't have to make your mind up now, and it really is going to be, from a budgetary standpoint, it'll be a number to discuss, but right now, going into this budget, it won't have any effect on that at this point in time. But you'll need to make, and if you put it in the franchise agreement, you just have to put them on notice that you essentially reserve the right to do a franchise fee. So you don't have to do it in January of '25 when the agreement comes due. You could do it in July of '26. So it's just, but you have to have it in your ordinance that you reserve the right to do a franchise fee.
So you were saying how we have it now is the fee, not the,
No, we do not have a fee in place whatsoever.
okay.
What you would have to make a determination on, the local option sales tax is in play.
Okay.
And
And
so,
that's just the 1% that we have now, or is it all 7% for that?
The one.
it's just the 1%.
Okay.
Oh, you mean, oh, I see what you mean. I'm sorry. Yes. No, it's just our 1%.
Okay.
Because again, it's still a local option sales tax and some cities have it, some don't. But you'll have to make that determination if there's an economic, I won't say incentive, but what's the economic reality between the two? And which one is more, as the council would see, more beneficial? But you can't have both on electric and gas.
If the legislature messes with Lost, would that, how would
yeah.
that impact franchise fees?
That was one of the questions that came up because like Ankeny has a franchise fee, but not local option. And the way it was written, they would get both. So that was one of the clarifications of, well, that would change it because it's no longer local option. It would be a statewide. So in that scenario, it did appear based on the legislation last year that they could have both, not and they would still get the benefit of the statewide piece and keep their franchise fee in place. So.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, the local option sales tax exclusively on the utility bills, not like replacing the whole local option sales tax with on clothes and other, stuff that people buy in Urbandale.
We're just talking about the utilities.
So you can only have either that Urbandale 1 cent
Right now.
or the franchise 5% or whatever on the utility bills.
That,
Okay.
just the utility bills, gas and electric. And as I said, the 1% sales tax applies to purchases, services, and goods. The utility franchise fee,
Only applies to.
it applies to the use of gas, natural gas and electricity. And it is across the board,
By all users.
all users, exactly. And so it's just tacked onto the bill, and it's a percentage, obviously, of what you use. So if you're a big user, obviously, you're going to pay more into it. If you're a small user, you're going to pay less. But again, now, for example, there's in the schools, there's a provision that they don't have to pay that tax.
The franchise or the
No,
local option?
local option sales tax, goods and services. So this captures everything.
Okay.
It's all users. You cannot use your tax exempt status to be excluded from the franchise fee. Maybe that's a better way of putting it.
But if you impose the franchise fee, if you have a franchise fee, the loss would still be in effect for things other than.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, it only removes it from like your water utility bill and stuff. We're collecting local option sales tax on that. It would be traded off on only utility. The lost would still be in place for other things, but it is you give up a chunk or you keep it.
Yeah, and so when we're looking at, again, this is not promoting or not promoting, it just prepares you as a council and future councils to make that determination if you see that as a revenue source to supplant something that the state may change or for something that you'd like to do that you don't have the funding for.
So putting the cart well before the horse here, but if we were to pass it, you had mentioned that if we passed it this year, we could wait until 2026. So essentially, if we just put the city on notice that we passed an ordinance saying that we can collect this franchise fee, we can enact that at any time in the future, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and right now, your current agreement expires at the end of '24. Is it, I'm saying, I didn't, Wanna get
fiscal
my-
'25, but
Yes.
it is, I don't, Curtis, do you remember what that date was? It's in '25, end of '25?
Yeah, so you would
It's
have to.
coming up, the one we already have in place. So to clarify, this is the mid-am one that we're talking about that is already in place, so it's not.
Yes,
So that has to be renewed one way or the other, but I think the point is to get it on the books now so that while we're negotiating that, it preserves our right to do it. Because if we do the contract without it, you
right.
can't,
You can't
under that
impose the
contract, impose
franchise
it.
fee.
Got
Does
it.
that make
And-
sense?
Okay.
Yes,
It keeps your
the
options open. It's the franchise fee the franchise you have with the mid-am is the use of the right-of-way and public right-of-ways and streets and section, et cetera. So now you're saying that if you put that into the next agreement, essentially the council reserves that right at some point to take a vote and up to 5% impose a franchise fee.
And how often, or how long does the contract last before it has to be renewed with Mid-Am?
This one's been in place for
Oh, a long time.
Oh, really?
20, it's
More than 10 years, for sure. I
Yes.
feel like it might have been done once since I've been here, but
I think so.
it's
it's
not
at
been
least
done
10
since I've been
years.
here.
What you're saying is we don't get very many opportunities.
no, we do not get many opportunities.
Thank you.
for
That's a
this.
better way of
Correct.
putting it, Larry. We don't get many opportunities because, as you can imagine, mid-am, again, they want certainty. And and like anybody, and they would get a longer-term contract that, I don't know if there's a provision in the code, state code that says you have a maximum, but, certainly, just putting on notice that we're going to have that additional expense.
Yeah.
We have an attorney out of the Minneapolis Twin Cities area that is essentially the Midwest expert on the franchise fees.
Gotcha.
And not franchise fees, but on franchising with utilities. And so that's who we use, and every once in a while, we make reference to that. But it sits relatively dormant, and then we will then put it back into play when we renew the agreement with Mid-Am.
Got it.
Are there we have other utilities, don't we,
That it would apply to?
that serve Urbandale besides?
This applies only to Mid-Am,
Yeah,
gas and
Mid-Am.
electric.
You were at the meeting with the Iowa State students and we had somebody from Mid-Am was there, talking to the students, and I swear she said that, I don't know, Black Hills or something provided some people with natural gas in Urbandale, maybe? I don't,
Alliance Energy is the
Curtis?
other.
Black Hills is the bulk supplier.
But the actual service provider is
Okay.
Mid-Am.
Yeah,
I'm not aware of another one that
Right.
would be the one that does the billings, I think, is
Right.
Mid-Am.
there, for example, Waukee has its own natural gas operation. Again, that's been established for a long, long time. And depending upon the industries you have, in my previous community, there was an industry that was a bulk buyer and bought directly off the pipeline because they had that type of clout. So in here, in the metro area, the distribution is from Mid-Am. And they're the ones who would collect it, and they're the ones who would bill for it and then pay it back to us.
okay.
So that's just, again, an option, but that's just, I wanted to bring that to your attention.
Are they generally opposed to these in their agreements?
Mid-Am?
Yeah.
The communities that I know that have had it for a long time, so that really has never come up in my conversation about it. I don't believe, because they pass it along to their customers, and they have it in play already, I don't believe it's that big a deal. Now, that's coming from me, and I don't know if Mid-Am has an official position that they object to these things, but again, that would be a lot of information that we'd gather along the way. Again, this is not a proposal to do it. This isn't anything else other to tell you that additional legal services are built into the fiscal year for
We
your.
have other franchise agreements, so don't we? Don't we have a cable franchise agreement?
Cable franchise, yes, that's the only other one that we have.
Yeah.
And what about
no
that
fee.
contract?
No fee on the cable.
Yeah, we get,
We get a fee on that?
yeah, it's slowly declining. As people cut the
Oh, that's
ties and go
right,
to
yes.
streaming service, then that,
Yeah.
it's only on cable services, yes.
It's only on cable, it's not
Right.
on their internet services or anything?
No,
Correct.
just on the,
And we don't have it on water or any of that.
Yeah.
and again, this is linked just because we have the agreement with Mid-Am that's expiring and you need to be prepared for your options.
Thank you for taking the lid off that can of worms. Appreciate it.
I'm sorry?
Thank you for taking that lid off the can of worms. I appreciate it.
Well, just to kind of prep, because we'll be back.
I appreciate it. I
We'll-
actually do.
we'll be
When
back.
do you anticipate bringing this discussion back to us or starting to
Well,
work
it
on this?
expires in January of '25, so we'll probably start something this summer. I mean, we'll get through the budget, but again, there's been John did some preliminary review, and we did get a number from Mid-Am saying that this is the estimated revenue stream that you could see. And I think they even did a comparison as, if you offset it, you get rid of the 1%, you put this in play, here's the numbers that you have. So. Also, this covers our legal services with the city attorney, Bob Layden, at this point in time. And I have had a conversation with Bob, and certainly, some of the issues associated with Bob right now is that he has some health issues that he's dealing with, and he's recovering from those. Actually, he had a surgery today, and he talked to me this afternoon, which I was a bit surprised that he called, but everything went very well. So what he has shared with me, and he said I could share with you folks, is that he'll turn 80 this summer, and that he'll be celebrating his 45th year of being the city attorney, and that he understands that, there may be a possibility of a change. And if there is, he would like to consider through the end of the calendar year. I won't speak on behalf of the mayor, but I know that there is some question about whether or not and I think he's amenable to anything. He works at the pleasure of the council. So that relationship operationally and he obviously is available to all of us on staff. We've all worked with him. It's worked. We don't have many real gaps there. And there are legal services that we purchase outside of Bob for specialty related issues. Having said that, again, he understands that, he's nearing retirement and looking at options that the city will be pursuing. If it's at the fiscal year or if it's at the end of the calendar year. But in 2024, I have every anticipation that Bob will be retiring.
So, but that's not really worked into this budget. You have it under future budget considerations.
Well, there's a placeholder here that just says city attorney. It does not say retainer. That's the first line in there in the details on GG 29. So this was leaving our option open for what is that? Whether that decision was to try to do something in-house, are we going to continue to contractual? We wouldn't plan for a retainer necessarily, but it can go to whatever council decides, whatever direction you want to move. So it is allowing for continued legal services that will either be contracted or brought in-house.
Well, I think we need to move forward with finding, on our schedule, with finding a replacement. I know Bob's had some conversations with Maria Brownell, and I think,
AJ has actually.
okay, one
But I
of
mean,
you,
that was
one
the
of you did.
suggestion,
I
yes.
think, I have a high degree of comfort with her, having already worked with her, but I don't know how her costs compare to what we're paying, and
That conversation has not got into the dollars and cents yet. I'm going to be upfront with you folks. This is a bit of an awkward conversation for me to have with the city attorney because he doesn't work for the city manager's office or in the scale of operational. He works for all of you folks.
but you work for us, so we're authorized. Can't you speak for us?
No, that is, yes. But at the same time, that authorization hasn't come. I'm not avoiding it, please understand. But I am respectful of the roles and responsibilities of everybody in this regard. And I don't want to go out I don't want to represent the council on something that they're not prepared to have to back on. And I don't sense that, but if you don't know by now, I'm sensitive to those roles and responsibilities, and I don't want to overstep my boundaries. I've made some preliminary conversations. The mayor and I have had some preliminary conversations, and I've made inquiries, but I have done nothing more than finding availability and interest, which exist.
There may be some increased costs as a result of it. I don't anticipate a huge amount of increased costs. So if we were to negotiate a retainer agreement with Maria on this, so.
Well, what does the process look like that you feel comfortable with on our behalf?
I mean, and is it a moot point at this point? Like, right now, it's a budget issue. We have a spot in the budget, and at a later time, we discuss process.
I think that's,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, that's, I think you're both saying the same thing. I think that's accurate, yeah.
Yes.
I think we have a good enough placeholder for now for the budget, and then.
You feel the $150,000 is adequate if we transition in this budget year?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
How common, or I guess I'm not caught up, is there another person that we've at least like?
GG27.
Yes,
Decision
well,
made?
I will tell you that, Bob's had some health issues that he's been resolving. He is always available for staff. When we call, we make arrangements for meetings, whether WebEx or whether on the phone. He listens to all the council meetings. He's available, even though he's not in person, he's on WebEx. He has a partner, Tim Pearson. He was at the last council meeting. He was in town.
Yep.
And so he was here and would make arrangements for Tim to be here if absolutely necessary, if we felt that having the city attorney actually sitting here to address something that may come from the audience or a vendor or a burning question that the council had. And so I don't believe that we've ever been without legal representation, either at a staff level or at the council level. So we've had those bases covered, and quite honestly, the pandemic was a great trial run, if you will, because we had that situation where there were council meetings where everybody was on WebEx, and so when we got back to normal, because of all those issues, that he was on WebEx, but he has represented us, and operationally, Bob is the city attorney. We contract for the prosecution, that he pays for half of that, we pay for half of that. So we have a separate individual who does our prosecution of all the citations, and that has not fallen off. That has stayed steady. And so, it's just it's an evolution of a process where, he has indicated that in 24 that he'll be retiring. And that determination about when that will happen really will be what everybody's comfort level is.
And if this, we've got the 150 in here now. If we get to a point where it's 175 or something like that, that would just be a budget revision process that we would go through?
And keep in mind, we have all of the line items below that. So in total, you've got 335,000 to work with. So these were estimates in there for the franchise fee items that we'll need to go through. Timing of that, we very rarely spend the entire budget, but we always provide a cushion in there for unexpected items. So yes, at worst, we would have to do a budget amendment. Not a big deal.
Well, I would like us to see us move forward with finding.
Exploring our options?
Exploring our options
Okay.
at the earliest convenience when the budget process is over.
Okay.
We've had the discussion, I've had a discussion with Bridget, I know, but just as we're looking at this, so whether or not we continue to do some sort of retainer agreement or hire an in-house attorney, I still think it's wise that we do a retainer agreement. I think we get the best bang for our buck that way. We're not at a point where we need a full-time in-house attorney. I don't think, and most cities are not that way either. Des Moines obviously has some legal staff. West Des Moines has a couple, but that's really in the metro area. Those two cities are the only ones that have in-house legal one. I think we get far better bang for our buck by contracting for it, and especially if we were to do a deal with Maria. Allers already does our bonding work and
Labor attorney?
Labor, so they're familiar with us. We're well served by the Allers firm as far as their knowledge of us and our comfort with them, so.
Who is, you were saying Maria?
Maria Brownell,
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
she's done some work for Urbandale previously through Bob. She's co-counseled on some things as well, so.
I was just wondering if that was Bob's daughter.
The daughter-in-law.
Yes.
Yep.
I will, as soon
Don't
as,
hold that against her.
after this process is completed, I'll have a conversation with the current city attorney and find out more specifics, and I will more formalize in a conversation with Ms. Brownell.
And I guess would having, since Bob's been around a while, that mayor, or Attorney Bob, not to
Attorney
be
Bob.
confused with Mayor
Yeah.
Attorney Bob, Attorney Mayor Bob. I mean, we haven't really, no one has really done this process in a while. I mean, would we have, a opportunity to interview her, or speak to, I mean, I don't know, not our, I mean, I think we just need to make sure we have a comfort level with her before we sign the.
No, I don't think that's unheard of. I mean, that's one of those things that, again, that relationship legally and is between you folks and the city attorney as someone who's directly accountable to the council. Yeah, that is a process that we can set up, and I'm sure she would welcome that. I know she's been before you numerous times, and as the mayor mentioned, she's with the Allers firm, and we do bond, we do development agreements, we do labor with them. And they've had a long relationship in all those categories with the city. I'll say 20 plus 20, 25 years in those categories. So again.
So
very
those
well.
other things that you talked about, like where she's been involved, fall in outside counsel and miscellaneous expenses on
Yeah.
the budget line?
Yeah. For example, she assisted Bob with the condemnation that we had with the Fisher property.
Yes,
So I wanted to make sure I get my right condemnation.
that was,
That one was the most recent.
and unforgettable. Or forgettable.
It was resolved. And I think that's what you want in any legal setting, to have issues resolved. So we'll leave it at that. Any other questions on legal? And again,
Just one thing.
yeah,
Not really a question, but, we've talked about succession planning several times. And, what do we, what is the like, there have been questions from all of us, I think, what is the process sometimes? When we're talking about succession planning, are we also, as we're kind of walking through the process, are we defining and documenting how we go through it, or how we'd like to go through it at least, just in the future, especially since we're going to be doing this a lot with various department heads and things like that?
one of the things that, and I'm just trying to think of the timing when Erin made her presentation to the council. I don't know if were you part of that discussion, Blake, do you recall? It might have been this summer, or the summer of '23. It might have been before you and Pat came on board. But, Erin put together a fairly comprehensive and formal process for the directors to say, look at succession within your department. Some of it is planning that, I think she mentioned it on Saturday morning from the succession standpoint. She's working with a couple departments that they know that through eligible retirement thresholds, that some departments are rapidly approaching that with numerous people. How are you in the department planning to make making those succession opportunities and/or planning for that? And part of the whole succession direction is, in general, is that we're looking at our current staff within all the departments and looking at and talking with the employees about where do you see yourself, or what interest do you have? Do you have an interest in going to that next step of supervision and management? If you do, and assuming that the employee has been a good employee and that has good track record, then it becomes a matter of what skill sets do we need to provide to you, either through outside training? We have a tuition reimbursement program that a number of our employees have taken part of. And then you look at that and you say, is there an interest that we can prepare you for that point at some point when you may be a candidate for this position? So that's what we're looking at. So again, I'll use the police department for an example. If you look at their senior management, they're probably all within a 5-year period that almost everybody at the senior level, and I'll call that from the captains on up, are eligible. And the two retirement systems we have different thresholds for eligibility. The police is a smaller or a lesser eligibility. It's 22.
55 and 20 years.
Yeah, 55 and 20. And IPERS is the rule of 88. So a combination of service and age to get you to 88 for full retirement. So those are two different thresholds that we look at. And then you look at just normal things that people maybe take a look at different opportunities. Health issues may ask them to step aside, or there's a lot of things that put that into play. But our succession has been to try to identify people within each of the departments that have either the interest or propensity to make those next steps. It just is that way. It's as our workforce ages out, as people have other interests, it is, and in retirement. And again, you heard the HR director say that our applicants are down, and that's across the board. And I think Rob made a comment to you that, 2009, 2010, we'd have 200 people apply for a police officer job. I think one time when I first got here, we had some library position, and I can't think of what it was, might have been a page or something. We had close to 400 people apply. And it's mind-boggling that right now you look and you're down 68 to 70% over the last several years. And again, it's where the interest is. And so again, succession planning is looking at what you have on board now and what's the best position to utilize them in the future. So there is a formalized process that we're doing. Okay. It gives an assessment process that she put together for the directors. Yep.
General support?
General support. If you look at GG 31. All right, the general support is, from the employment standpoint, this is where we account for Jamie, who sits up front. And so that's one of our larger expenses. The biggest expense in this budget is, the two of them are if you look on page GG 33, it is the property casualty and cyber liability insurance, the things that we need to protect ourselves. And then we have the workers' comps coverage and the 411 medical claims. And so those expenses are significant for us. One of the things that, in talking with John, when we looked at the property and casualty, we are with the organization called ICAP. ICAP was an organization that was founded in the early to mid 80s when the insurance market went really just stone cold for municipalities, school districts, et cetera. And so there's about 800 units, if you will, or 800 participants in the ICAP system now. Pardon me. Almost exclusively school districts, counties, cities. There may be some not-for-profits that qualify to be in that, but again, the predominance are the public entities. And so, again, through the whole actuarial process, which I just about to tell you everything I know about the actuarial process, and they assess the claims that you have and the risk that you present, and then they assign a value to that, then they will charge you for that. And it's a pool. So with all the cities, that we're in the pool with all of them. And so if you have a lot of claims, the pool absorbs that. And right now, there has been so many claims through the ICAP system that we saw a significant increase in this budget for that. I think it was between 20 and 30%. And it was significant because all the claims that they've had throughout the system are catching up to them. In the last couple of years, and prior to the last 2 years, I'll say, we used to get a credit. You know, a dollar amount would be assigned to us and that credit would come back in essentially a discount, anywhere from $28,000 to $30,000 to $35,000 in that range. And we haven't gotten it for a couple of years. And now we're seeing this increase. I don't know enough about the insurance market, but I also know that for municipalities in particular, when we looked probably 6, 7 years ago, we looked at going to the private market to look at our casualty needs. Their pricing was, for a 3-year period, was very reasonable. But at that time, with the ICAP system, you take all the claims on file, you take those with you. They just basically say goodbye and good luck, and you have that exposure. And then we were receiving discounts too at the end of the year or the renewal period. So it really didn't make a lot of sense for us to take a risk with us and then also to lose our discount. So that kind of evened out or made more economic sense to stay with ICAP. Again, we haven't searched the market for a while. I knew at one time that the big player for municipalities, what still is EMC Insurance. But they have a threshold for population. They will not insure the city of Urbandale. It's mostly small towns in the 5,000 to 10,000 range. So they have a very niche market, and we don't qualify for that. On the private side, the Travelers is a company that has been in, and whether they are now or not, I don't know, in the municipal market. And that's one that we looked at previously, making that changeover. So again, we're not making any suggestions or recommendations to shift. I just want to give you a quick overview about the marketplace and that we're seeing a significant increase this year for the next fiscal year. And again, just insurance in general, it's driven by the number of claims and the exposure that an insurance company has. They buy reinsurance for the big claims, but the exposure they have as an organization and how they spread those costs. And again, this gets back to when I mentioned earlier when we talked the other day about some of the things associated with this and workers' comp and training and wellness. I think we do a very good job with minimizing our exposure. And so that's great because, again, aside from making sure our people are okay, that we don't have a lot of issues. We work to prevent as many issues as we can. And that you can't say that for every community that belongs in ICAP. And you can't say that for school districts, and you can't say that for counties. Again, I can't speak to what they're doing, but I know that we do a really good job with it. And when you're thrown into a pool, you take the good and the bad.
Does it make sense to maybe look at going out and getting quotes this next year? I mean, insurance has just skyrocketed, private as well. So, I mean, it might be worth the time
I
to
think so.
just go back and look.
We've done, just like the garbage thing, we've done reality checks on insurance as well from time to time.
I'm trying to think, it's probably been at least 5, if not 7 years, Nikki. Does that sound about right?
I feel like it's been probably 5-ish.
Yeah.
I know John worked on it.
Yeah, and that's certainly something we can look at and just test the market. We can just find out who's still providing that coverage. Because if you look at our levels of exposure, you know, we have obviously the property and casualty, we have automobile, we have public officials, we have police, we have cyber. Cyber has been one that has gone up significantly in the last couple of years. I think you heard James on Saturday talk about some of the safeguards we have in place. And one of you asked a question about, is this linked to insurance? Yeah, it is. You know, there was provisions in there that through Beckley or Bentley? The insurance coverage for IT is?
Beasley.
Beasley. I knew it was a B.
It's close.
Yeah, Beasley, Bentley, Beckley. So Beasley, and their requirement was you have to do all these things. You have to put all these things in play to safeguard yourself. And we do. And at times it's just wash, rinse, and repeat. You've got to make sure you have that safeguards in place. But that's a very expensive proposition for us. And you don't want to lose it because, yeah, you just don't want to lose it, you know, because a lot of bad things can happen. But Having said that, going out to the private market, I'm sure there'll be some parts of it that you'll have to then look to a specialty insurer for things. And again, we can start looking at that to see, number one, who's a player out there? You know, who's available to take business? Because even though they may be in the municipal market, they may not be open to new clients.
The tail exposure is the one that really gets you on.
Oh, yes.
The
On the
what?
The tail exposure that AJ mentioned, that if we were to move out,
Take your
any
claims
claims we
with you.
had through ICAP would be, we're essentially,
On our dollar.
we're naked on them then.
Yeah.
Do we have any of those claims now?
Well, we don't, not that you necessarily know of, but if it's something that happened while you were insured with,
Yeah.
Okay.
you know,
It's
somebody
essentially-
comes forward 2 years ago, had a fall that they just now are telling
So
us
like
about, which has
the-
happened.
Our policies are more claims-made policies versus.
It's exposure
Situation
at the
we had
time
up at
of event.
by the movie theater
Right.
came several years after the
Yes,
fact.
correct.
Yeah. There's a statute of
So we
limitations
could
that,
have a situation like that
yes,
we don't
Even
think
though
we're
it's-
free and clear, but,
yeah,
yeah. Okay.
yeah. And if it hasn't been resolved yet, you take that with you. So as the mayor said, there's a level of exposure that you have to accept that you go with you, and it comes out of your pocket. So there's a lot of considerations when you look at that. And if the cost savings are significant enough that, and you know what your exposure, what your points of vulnerability are, then you make that decision. And again, we've been with ICAP, I think we're one of the founding members, so we've been around with ICAP for a long time. And, you know, I've been exposed to the insurance world in the municipalities for a while. Once you get comfortable with them, particularly on the private side, you know, rate increases, sometimes they'll just say, we're not going to renew you for whatever reason. They're considered to be a high-risk exposure. So lots of different things. But I think if we went out there, we'll just have to see who's available and what the process is. And you'll have to make a determination if you want us to go that direction. But that's the biggest expense here. And then down at the bottom, you'll see the $100,000, the building maintenance fund contribution, preventative maintenance projects at City Hall. And I know there was a question during Saturday that we'll get you that listing as well. I think one of you raised a question about if they could see the preventative maintenance schedule, or did I imagine that? You're all looking at me like I'm imagining that.
That was your dream.
Okay.
Saturday night, you're
Yeah.
good.
Too, so it clearly was
Yeah.
heard by multiples. I think just to see what that schedule looked like, to get an idea of what things were included. But,
I think I think I asked a question about the library roof.
oh, as to where it was, yes.
Okay, and then we have
Where
that
the replacement
coming up
was.
with
That's coming
with the additional dollars for that study, the architectural study. All right.
That makes more sense.
It's on our list. We'll probably give it to you if you don't read it if you don't want to, so to speak. So, all right. Any other questions on general support?
What's the
Okay.
lobby display case under item number 72? Is that a new display case?
That is a new display. When we get done with all of our physical reconfigurations, as we mentioned, we're in the process of, in the very near future, within the next month, we'll be making the physical movement of all the finance and clerk operations over into the Parks and Recreation. That includes the front desk operation. It is planned that we'll take down that counter and we'll have an open space there. And that's where we talked about having some type of display case for the things that we get awarded and the things that we'd like to display.
So when you come into City Hall, you won't see Jamie.
No,
You'll have to turn
you'll make a left turn.
into the Parks
Yes.
Department area.
She'll be there.
Okay.
We've talked about, how do we, she'll be at that counter, will be open. There will be a camera screen for her to see that people there, so we don't leave people hanging in the lobby.
Okay.
Yeah, because we knew that was going to be an issue because there's the physical configuration of how that's set. And you come in these doors, and if you came in the far left door or the far right door when you're coming in, it might be, someone could stand there looking around, looking for a kiosk, looking for something and
Yeah.
say, where am I?
Okay.
And so we will do that. But yes, the display case,
That'll be great.
we thought it was in time because we get We get awards every once in a while.
Sure do.
Yeah, we like to display them. I think we've got them on people's desks now. Is that who doesn't have an award on their desk? And so we'll find a home for something around the building, so.
This isn't directly related to a display case, but the thought that keeps going through my head is safety. Because she won't be able to see people who are coming in until they're right there. Or will she with that camera?
Yeah, they're adding a camera up in this corner, so it'll have a view on that so that we can tell, or if she wasn't at her desk, that the rest of us that are sitting back in there can tell that somebody's approaching, so we should go up. So there will be a closed circuit camera in the lobby.
Yeah. Interesting that you mentioned that. We've had a long discussion today about what we may, and we've had that for the last several weeks about we're in this reconfiguration mode and remodeling mode. What can we do to enhance our safety profile for the building? And lots of reasons that we're all aware of. But we also recognize that someone entering the building, this is a public entrance. It's a public entrance over at community development. You have people who are busy at the counter. You have visual issues. And if someone wants to gain access to the building and their intent to do so, they more than likely will. We will do our best. We have internal security measures. We've had training that we're needing to update as well, but we're well aware of those risks. And if you look around, aside from the front lobby, there's a door that goes into community development engineering that once you're in the lobby, you have access to without a key. But all of our offices are key access, and everything behind the counter at community development is key access as far as getting in those two doors either side of the counter. So we have measures in place now, but certainly looking at ways that we can reasonably and effectively enhance those security opportunities for us.
If you did see someone coming up with this camera,
Mm-hmm.
is there a way to lock the doors immediately?
There is. We had that discussion today as well. And we had an incident probably, it was pre-pandemic, so I'll say maybe 4 years ago, where we had an individual where we had the staff over from recreation and they had controlled the key fob system and they automatically locked the door because it was imminent and we said lock it down. But if we had to do an emergency, we're working on plans for that as well to give multiple points of access that we could trigger a lockdown of the building. Now, again, visually, if they're in the building, locking.
That's why the camera probably needs to monitor who's approaching.
Yes, as best we can, it'll be pointed toward those doors, giving us the maximum view of that. Another option is, and we've talked about this as well, do you put something on the sidewalk that's leading up to the building? Now, again, it's in today's world, you just don't know. And if someone is intent on getting into the building or is concealing something that you can't see, you don't know. And so that's the curse of a public building, if you will. You may need access for all the folks who come in who have legitimate reasons, but I don't believe you can make it 100% safe without almost eliminating access to the building. And that's the problem. So we'll do our best. We'll talk to, we have some options to talk to security officials. We've talked to the police department before. We've had an assessment done previously, as we've made some changes according to that assessment done, but we're going to look to enhance our security as best we can and still maintain a public building.
Yeah.
And our budget allows for that.
It depends on what the improvement is. The building maintenance fund would have available balance, to an extent. It depends what's recommended.
Yeah.
And we do have panic buttons as well already. So we have at the key entrances, all of those admin staff as well as our HR staff have panic and alert buttons that dial direct to the police that are silent alarms. So we do have where the exposure.
in your offices too?
Well, nobody gets mad at me, but
Never.
they
Mad all
just
the
avoid
time.
mine. But yes, all the HR staff has them in their offices, anywhere that an individual meeting could take place, and then the front reception in all 3 reception areas. Yes, you have
Is this the only
one.
one on the dais, or is there
I think
is there one on the?
Nicole also has one.
Nicole has one, I don't know. Pat?
You
I don't think you have one. Don't push anything. Nope,
Let's
okay.
test them. Ready?
No, I don't think there's one with you, Bridget. I don't know, but
Don't
don't
touch
push
it.
it. If you,
It's a little,
Buttons are
it's a little
designed,
slide.
you have your finger and you pull it
Yeah,
back.
slide it towards you,
Ah,
but,
it's like-
but don't. But
okay.
that's what it does.
you don't see anything? We're good.
I
Yeah,
thought there were a couple in here. I thought you had one of yours.
I thought we had 2 up here, but we obviously.
Oh, that is it, that is
Oh,
it.
okay.
That's it.
Oh, got it. Good to know.
I was gonna say, I thought there was,
I thought there was 2.
You're in charge, Pat.
So there's one on either side.
So you stick
Yeah.
your finger,
You have one
there's a,
as well?
there's a recess there,
See
you,
it, yeah, I
and you
feel it,
pull
you
it
pull
toward
it towards you.
Being the guy. in the
Got
room.
it.
yep, that's like mine.
Duck. Anyway,
How
so,
about, geez.
yes.
That should be council seat 101, okay.
So we'll look at those provisions and we'll get back to you on those other things that, again, we built the camera system into the remodel, so that's there already. So other enhancements we're looking at. So
I know, well aware, yeah.
I'd like to say we don't need them, but
No, we do.
safer than sorry.
And we have others.
Yeah. All right, so that gets us through, any more questions on general support, I should say, before I move on? If not, Nikki, you want to walk us through the debt service component?
So if you just go ahead and flip to the next tab is special revenue. There's a couple different ones in here. We'll just go through them in order. Everything else now is we're done with departments that have a director here to speak about it. So AJ and I will field the rest of these. Contingency is the first item there on SR1. So for the new folks, contingency is our 1-month cushion. So this is a legal budget issue. When we do our budget amendment, we have to have that done by June 1st because there is a 30-day appeal process for the public to come back and say, we don't want to do that. So once we get our amendment posted, if it's past June 1st, this is my, oh my goodness, we're going to exceed budget in that 1 month and I don't have time to amend. So it doesn't need to be a huge number because really it's enough to cover us until we can hit the new budget year. So it's a relatively small number. It rolls right back into general fund. This does not go to a separate fund and sit there to accumulate. It is literally part of the general fund. And if we need to use it, I have to come before you to ask for it. So I can't just use it to offset something. We would have a pretty specific need for it. The last time we used it was for the risk management fund. I believe that was 4 years ago, it might be 5, when we had an exceptionally high claims year and we didn't have our reinsurance. It takes a month for that to go in and we were going to go negative cash to get the claims paid because then we get reinsurance on top of that, but it's quite a ways later than we write the check. So we actually had to use it at that time to backfill and provide a cushion for that. Prior to that, it was my second year here and we had a lemon for a fire apparatus that died right at the end of the year and they had emergency repairs. So that's literally the only times we've used it. So it's there for a reason, but we don't have to use it very often and you would be fully aware of that. Okay, so that's contingency. Debt service, SR3. So we've kind of touched on several of these pieces throughout the discussions, but debt service is a separate levy. This is all based on the capital improvements program that you all have already approved. So the recommendation is from that document was to go up 5 cents. So a couple factors in that, primarily being the cost of projects. We have the same number of projects, if not more, but they all are costing quite a bit more than we anticipated. So in order to still be able to do those number of projects, we're going to have to start building a little bit of cushion. If you recall, we used to be at $2. Well, we were at 205 for a little while. We've been taking that down. Every time I call and pay off a bond using the local option sales tax that we did, we've done 3 now, that reduces it, right? So that's paying off the mortgage. It's permanently gone. So whatever cents on the levy it took to pay that one is permanently gone. So last year, if you recall, I was supposed to pay off one. Rates went crazy, so it no longer made sense to do that. And we had the bids come through on the Merle Hay reinvestment pieces. So that all went to capital. So it's still going towards the projects, and I didn't have to levy for it because I couldn't at that point. But those just get directed back into the project. So I use those local option sales tax, still providing debt relief or levy relief because I didn't debt issue for it. Does that make sense? So it can go either way, and it's still offsetting that. It'll be some combination thereof, but by not paying off that 3.4 million, that's why I wasn't able to lower debt service. So, and instead, we have to provide a little more cushion because our project costs have started to go up as well. So I don't know that that is going to need to continue to go up as long as we continue to call and pay off. So we're back in that kind of interest rates stopped the freak out, right? They were really high last year. They have now fully stabilized. So we're back to the point of now it makes sense to go ahead and call and pay off some of those. If you remember, we were in year 4 last year when we had to kind of blow up my call and payoff process to get us effectively debt-free in 8 years. So if we can get back on track with that, local option is still particularly strong. So that is allowing us to go ahead and do payoffs. I've got this fiscal year, so we're calling and paying off the Station 43 bonds. And that's using a combination. All of the Dallas County funds will be used up on that I've got in reserve. And then even a portion of the Polk County pieces so that we can call the entire thing. So there was more than just the fire station in that bond, if you recall. But we'll retire the entire 2018A bonds with that. So that's 6.565 million. That's happening this June. The other one, we already talked about the TIF piece. So we'll pay off another 5.6 million also in June for those TIF bonds because I have those funds on hand. So that is, there's actually 2 in that 2017 B and 2018 B. So then next budget that we're talking about here in this debt service number, that one reflects 8.435 million of TIF. So again, that transfers in. If you recall that from Saturday, it still comes in and is paid out of here. So the expense looks really high because that came in from TIF. But then we also have the 2017A, which is the one I was supposed to do last year, as well as the 2019A. So that allows us to get back on track, right? So now I'm back on my payoff schedule and will catch me up from the one I should have done last year and now also do the one we'd planned for this year. And then I have another one, 2020, in 2026 budget. I'm projecting to go ahead and get that one out. So all of that said, end of the day, the debt service levy should be stable now. Hopefully it will continue to come down as I pay these off, but big caveat on what capital costs go for these bids. If we need to balance that, my goal is at least to remain stable. We knew our ceiling, our floor for the levy was gonna be about $1.10. There's not really any feasible way for us to get below that because of the timing of how you have to issue debt to do a project. We can't get the cash on hand to be able to pay a contractor. We have to be able to issue debt. It's just going to be a super short term. Like we'll probably be issuing less than 5 years per term so that we can call and pay it off. And so it'll be a super quick turnaround. So it's a really good position to be in. And then we can use the capital, use the local option sales tax money to then direct fund projects. So our issuances should be far less. And then we should be able to fully fund a CIP to the level of which you all decide using that combination. We'll still have to have some debt, but we'll be able to call and pay it off really fast, still using the debt service levy versus going to a fully lost supported capital improvement program. That is a little bit risky and just the timing of it is not quite going to work out, but you'll have super short debt and we'll have a really good debt profile. So all of that said, the debt service fund, the total expenses in there looks really, really high. So because of those two things, so the fiscal 24, we will have to do an amendment to pull that second one in. And then the 25 recommended is at 28 million compared to this year's budget is 19. So it's very high, but because of those bonds that we're going to call and pay off, they have to physically be transferred and paid out of debt service. That's the legal authority. Debt service is the only fund that can pay for any type of general obligation bond. Does that make sense?
Barely.
Barely.
I mean, I guess I was under the, I mean, this all happened when Matt and I and Adam took on, came on board. We were surprised about the paying off the bonds as the plan, but I thought the ultimate goal at that point in 2020 was to cash flow the CIP. And so you're saying now you see us getting down to like $1.10 on the debt service, but still
We may still have to go.
cash and cash and debt
Right.
to fund it.
So the balance there is, I can't guarantee one way or the other. If I have a $10 million project, that means before I could accept the project, the contract, I would have to have local option sales tax of $10 million there, because I can't guarantee future funds. So it's all a timing thing. So if I know I can sell bonds, but yet use local option to service that, so the levy could continue to come down and the local option can pay the debt service on it, so that's a double win. But the timing of, we don't spend the money based on what I think we'll have. We wait till it's on hand. So if you've got, our CIP has $15 to $24 million worth of projects in it. That's a long time of holding on and doing nothing if we can only rely on cash flow. So that's true in 2 years ago when the bid numbers were really good, probably true. I'm just reserving that right to say, okay, we want to use local option to effectively cash flow it, and that could continue to reduce the debt service levy portion, because it can pay it, just like the fire station, right? So we can still provide property tax relief by using local option to pay the debt service, but yet, based on the timing, unless you want to stockpile the cash, because you have to have that availability, if you're not going to levy for it, you have to have the cash to sign the contract. So I think that's my main concern, is not putting ourselves in a corner of saying, I'm going to cash flow our entire CIP with lost. The timing of that is we're going to have to wean ourselves off of debt service, because I'm issuing 10-year debt. So the last 4 years that we've been calling and paying off, I'm still issuing every year, right? So I have 10 years to pay that off. So that's why the debt service will kind of have that magic. It could change, but that was our projection, was $1.10. If we're continuing to pay those off, I mean, at 5 years, hopefully we have enough to call and pay them off. Then they're done. And we could advance it, but I don't know what rates are going to do. And our CIP is getting to be pretty big. There's a lot of big projects out there. So you can't sign a contract not knowing that you can either levy for it or plan to levy for it, or you've got cash on hand. Does that make sense?
As much as it's going to make. So
Okay. I'm maintaining flexibility, and it's only a timing thing, because, and our financial advisor has gone through and said, we can issue short-term, we wouldn't even have to sell a true bond. You could do a direct placement short-term loan. There are some implications to doing that, but you can also issue 2-year debt. It's not quite as attractive, because
to who?
it's the
buyer?
bond buyer.
Okay.
So you might pay a little bit more interest, because it's not a guaranteed stream that they're going to get, but it's absolutely doable. So we've got lots of options, but the reason that we had used local option sales tax originally to call and pay off bonds, because that is the closest we can really show point blank, this is how we're providing tax relief to the property taxpayer. We're paying off our mortgage. That's what it's direct money out for something we already owe. So that's why we had done it that way, and the ideal was to be able to grow cash flow for CIP.
So I have a crazy idea that in your discussion came to me, and I think it's a brilliant idea, and maybe you all think I'm silly, but I don't feel like we've done like a proper community celebration of the fire station, because it opened during COVID and those sorts of things. And what if we made a really big deal out of paying off the bond?
Burning the mortgage?
Yes, I mean, we did, my parents
That's a
bought.
great pun for a fire station.
I mean, my parents did that in,
We'll have a pit somewhere.
yeah. I mean, I just remember, when my parents bought our house at the height of interest rates, we had
Sure.
at Christmas, we burned it because they paid it off in 10 years, whatever. But wouldn't that be cool? Because, I mean, I feel like we did doubly good on that particular situation because we used because we only had Dallas County to begin
Right,
with.
absolutely.
And we paid specifically for something in Dallas County. So I'm just throwing that out there is I think maybe that, and Derek's looking at me like, yeah. Maybe,
I wouldn't have Derek do it because he'd be pale in comparison with what the fire department would plan.
but.
I would tell you, and they would be, they would be so PO'd if they said, well, Derek's gonna do a fire. No, that's ours. So I'm saving this young guy from being hated by everybody.
Well,
So yes, we'll find appropriate
that just
people.
came to me while you were talking about it.
Yeah.
But, because I mean, because of COVID and the problems we had with the building, I think maybe that would be an event that we could have that shows the good stewards that we are. And show off the fire station, and have an event on the west side of the community. So I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe a stupid idea, but
Together, good Clive people.
Great idea.
it's,
No, we had it all planned. I mean, we were gonna have the Clive people, the mayor.
Oh,
and-
yeah. I
And
kn-
Mayor Sisink was gonna be there, and then all of a sudden, COVID. Because none of you were on council at the time, but the mayor will remember when we rehabbed Station 42, pardon me, we had a community. And we had a community event where it was a pancake breakfast.
Yep.
And people came in and they got to see all the new digs and kick the tires and all that good stuff. So on a Saturday morning, Goodwill donation for what I'll probably rate as a marginal breakfast selection.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that wasn't the intent for it. But it was a great opportunity for the community to come and see.
Yeah.
And we had always planned that, but you're right, COVID got in the way. And so,
but I think this could allow us to get people there and to really promote how we've financed this and paid it off really quickly, I think. So, I don't know.
AJ came up with the name for the event.
Yeah, burn the mortgage.
So Nikki,
Well, you do have $2,500 of a commemorative item that could be
Oh, we could make little
repurposed,
flames
just
or
saying.
something.
So you do have community events that's in the mayor and council's budget to put on events as
Yes.
you
We
would
will-
like, so, yes.
we will get the right people together to plan it.
So it's not a crazy, I'm not,
It's a great idea,
That's
I
fun.
think.
We have, well, you're
June 1st. That's when it is.
going to say, that I'll reserve that comment to the mayor and the council. I, on the other hand, who I'm your employee, say it's brilliant.
Yeah.
So, but at that same time, yes, we will put something together and we will get the appropriate group together that we will get it. I would suggest, I just mentioned to the mayor, just a reminder, we will include our friends in Clive.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because this is a very important component of their fire protection. They're partners in funding operations. And again, it gets back to what the chief told you on Saturday, the continued collaboration and cementing of that relationship. And this would be a very good opportunity to celebrate with them in that delayed format.
Absolutely.
Because it's good to, have your partners there and be in that celebration. So we will find something. And I will put the people together to make it look good so we can have a really nice celebration. And we'll call it Burn the Mortgage. We'll call it something appropriate. We'll come up with a snazzy name and
I can't wait.
we'll make it work. We'll find the date and I'm sure they'll exceed any budgetary expectation. They will say it's going to cost you $10,000 to do it and I'm only going to give them $1,000. No.
That's what contingency is for, it is June 1st, so there you go, so.
What's that now?
The contingency, you got $100,000 there.
Oh.
It's a heck of a party.
No, we're not going to do a $100,000 celebration. We will put something together appropriate at the right time. When will the debt?
June 1st is when we will officially pay it off.
Okay, so we'll.
I mean, it doesn't matter when it is, if it's
No, but you
towards
wanna-
fall or,
You want to get it when
Yeah.
there's,
Do it early.
I want to do it early because, again, when I look at events, and this is way off the subject, but when I look at events for things, I always try to look at what the spring schedules are because you have weather issues that can still be a little bit unreasonable. I look at my high school sports schedules. I look at summer when I get into all the other activities and things and people's vacations. I look into the fall, and more importantly, for all those who like football, I try to balance it in between the Iowa and Iowa State home game schedules. So all those things said, we'll probably do something in the summer before the summer vacation schedule kicks off.
June 1st is a Saturday.
Ooh,
Ooh,
Oh.
June 1st
is
is
a
a
Saturday.
Saturday.
okay.
How's that line
I
up?
like it.
Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah, I was just going to say, how does that?
It'd be the weekend after Memorial Day.
Yeah, the weekend after. State soccer tournament, but that's all right.
That could be perfect. I just think that theme of paying that bond off so quickly is a wonderful theme in addition to the beautiful fire station we're
Well,
getting.
in the old days, they used to issue notes, and we don't have notes anymore.
Well, I have some really old ones in my office from the 70s that I kept
Oh.
as historical because they're super cool looking.
Yeah.
So I do have some like that looked, we could replicate
We
it.
could replicate them.
It's pretty, they're
We'll
pretty cool.
find something.
Yeah, it'll be like a big.
All like gold filigree stuff. It's really cool.
Hey, Nikki, sorry to ruin the event talk and bring it back to the numbers portion of it. So we're raising the levy 5 cents, and you said it's because we didn't call off any of the bonds from prior fiscal year because of the interest rates, which made complete sense. So are we increasing the levy 5 cents to make up and essentially squeeze 2 fiscal years together?
Not necessarily squeeze them together, but the costs of the projects that we're going to do in '24,
Yeah.
in order to structure that in our 10 years, we needed to go up because the total cost of that. So normally if I pay them off, that's going to be a reduction to the levy. So we lowered it, assuming I was going to do $3.4 million of payoff. So I didn't get to do that. Plus my 2024, that column in the CIP program is higher than it was. So the combination thereof is, in order to structure it and fit over 10 years to not have to backload it, we try to shoot for even maturities. So we
Yeah.
pay off the same amount so that we control our interest. So that's why.
So you said you were back on track now, right? After this next fiscal
Assuming
year.
you approve it as
Assuming it's approved
this,
as is, yes.
that will
which
put us back on track, assuming the bond, I mean, the construction
doesn't
bids
take a
is
haywire,
a
yeah.
huge factor of it. We do a lot in our TIF districts, and the TIF projects don't affect this, right? TIF pays for TIF. So this is truly the general obligation pieces that is
Right.
not in a TIF district, so.
So when do you anticipate that we are going to be at that 110?
I would assume probably in '28 would be about, because if we can continue to pay them off, so then we'll come back down. My hope is that then we'll come back down for '26, because that'll be another payoff. And then we're starting to cash flow. We can either go ahead and move some of the loss, which we'll cover in the loss section. You can see that amount that's starting to go into capital, so that I can continue to ratchet it down. So the more I can use of lost to balance out the CIP, I don't have to issue debt for it, right? So that's kind of the balance, is how much lost comes in, assuming the state doesn't mess with lost. Huge factor
Fingers crossed.
there. Yeah, I mean, that was kind of heartbreaking last year, is that the whole thing could get blown up, because if they take away lost, we're kind of done for. Some of it hopefully would come back, but
Not to the
Yeah.
same degree. So as long as the state doesn't screw us.
Yeah.
28.
yeah,
What I'm
I think it could be 2027. I just got to kind of see how the CIP flows through and what rates do. Interest rates is what drives up that cost of issuing the debt, right? So when we were paying less than 1%.
As I say, ridiculous.
Wow, it's
low
really
price,
cheap
yeah.
to borrow money, so effectively I'm only really financing the CIP. There's very little interest cost. Well, that's not the case anymore, but we're working through that, so it's a balancing act.
What do we pay in interest rate?
What was the last one, do you remember?
We were at
27, 28?
275, 276, I think, and then the TIF one was slightly higher than that. Or it was slightly lower, sorry, one was 2.8 something.
Yeah.
Still below 3,
Yes.
which the 2 weeks before that, West Des Moines sold, and they were almost 5%, and we all about had a heart attack. That would have blown us up. The debt schedule would have looked terrible. So yeah, it's very, very variable from week to week, but it has stabilized. The Fed is indicating going down. They sold the week that the Fed spiked it and everybody kind of freaked out. So that is hopefully not occurring, but they've stabilized quite a bit because we issued, I think it was actually maybe 3 weeks difference when they did it.
Yeah.
Is
trying to
there
remember
anything West Des Moines could do about it? I mean, can
No.
they
No.
finance
They could
that?
have well, yes, they could refinance, absolutely. If they're callable, so they have to wait, you know, we issue a 10-year debt, so we can call at 5 years. If you issue 15, it's usually a 7. So yes, you could possibly do that. They could have not sold, they could have not accepted the bids and tried to go back out, but they, you know, in that market, they didn't know if it was going to get even worse. So it was just kind of terrible timing for them, so.
All right. Debt is what it is.
Yeah.
We borrow and we pay it off as quickly as possible. We provide you with the best options we can, given the circumstances, timing, interest rates, what we have that's callable. We'll continue to work toward that goal of minimizing our debt profile with the debt service fund. All right.
Any other questions in that area? Good to go? Okay, flip the page. Employee benefits levy, so this is the other special revenue levy that we talked about earlier. This one we've had for a couple years now, and it's been at 10 cents. It was one of those, the year that we had the legislation going to mess with us, and so we upped our 8.10. Yeah, so this one has been hanging out in there, and what this does is goes through, we're self-insured. For those of you that don't know, we have one fund, risk management fund, that pays all of our insurance benefits. So each department, based on the number of employees that they have, pay into this fund, okay? So there's this internal service fund for that. And then this levy effectively is saying, all right, well, we need to put in 3.75 million is what we're contributing into the fund spread across all departments by employee. So this effectively says, okay, here's 375, let me buy it down. So it's $530,000. 300 of it's coming from this levy. Some of it is the balance of lost. So we go through and true up how much we've got in excess that we said we had to spend on property tax reduction. That's what this is going for. So if you look at the totals that are going in there, the 375, up at the top, there's 530,000 in costs that are going out. But I'm only bringing in 330 from this levy. The difference is the amount coming in from local option. So we transfer it in here to go transfer out into internal service. This one will go down. So this was my kind of balancing out. I wanted to end on an even number. That's just a me thing to be able to say our rate is 10.08. So we reduced it by kind of an odd amount. So it's 7.592 cents to get us exactly to 10.08. So it did come down just a little bit to balance that out. That's really the only reason. This is one of those levies, as I mentioned Saturday, where that $1.51 is. This is 58 cents of it. So if we needed to up this to actually match it, that's where we'd be at. Does that make sense? Sorry, 81 cents. I see it right there. If we were going to fully fund all of those insurance costs, it would be an additional 81 cents to get there.
So out of the $1.51, we've got what's on 81 cents of it's right here.
Yep. The other one is IPERS based items. And then the allocation is on the next page of just how it applies to each function. So public safety, each one has its own, so we can still accurately reflect the cost of a function. So the police and fire and public safety, we still want to be able to show that we're not taking that off of our employee cost. We want to be able to show that that's still the cost, it's just that it's supplemented from this. So that's why they're broken up into the 5 functions that have employees. Okay. Any other ones on that? Clear as mud? Okay, so next one is local option sales tax. So this is on SR 11. I think we have hit on most of these items. Just a recap of kind of what we've been doing with it. The Station 43 items as well as the bond payoffs. This one is the one that in fiscal 21 is the first time we had established a community services department that's in the general fund, and the source of funding for that is local option sales tax. So it's 10% of the Polk County side. It was not included in the ballot language of Dallas. The reason we can do it on Polk is because the language includes any lawful purpose. So that's what this covers. So it's technically 5% because it's half is property tax relief and half is for these other services and any lawful purpose. So it's 10% of the Polk County lost funds, but only the 50% that can be used for that. Makes sense? So this year, 355,000 is what is going into that department to fund. So we pulled, back when we established that community services, any department that had an expense line item that reflected this is what community services, we want to pull those all together in one spot so you can get a feel for what the city spends on those. So we pulled UCAN and food pantry and all the civil rights items, Section 8 housing. So they pulled from a lot of different funds and so that they're in one department now. So you can actually see all the activity that we do for that. So those items are reflected we will hit community services next. So let's finish on the local option sales tax first. But that piece goes in there and then we also true that up. So this is my budgeted number for fiscal 25. So in fiscal 26, we go back and look at what was actual lost that came in. And it's usually between 20 and 50,000 difference of what we budgeted. And then we go ahead and move that in the next year. So you'll see that kind of true up happening on the lost funds that are coming in. It's an odd amount. That's because I did the true up from the previous year. So explain that piece a little bit. So if you flip over to the detail in there, SR 13. So mechanics of these funds, right? So we have Dallas County, 50% and 50%, two different uses. So I have two separate funds for that. So that we have a very clear and transparent method for our taxpayers to see what are you using those funds for? And then the same thing on the Polk County side. So that's why there's so much wording there. So of the 50% that's for property tax relief, these are the amounts that I move and for what. So there's the debt service pieces, the pieces that are going to capital. This is that buy down of the employee benefits that I mentioned earlier, of those monies that went in to buy down that 3.75 million. And then it moves to the pieces that is for capital projects. That right now is going all to go pay off those bonds that we talked about in the debt service side. And then on the Polk County side, the same thing. That's where the Polk County 10% side is on that for the community services department down there at 355.
What does PY stand for? I'm totally.
Prior year.
Okay.
So Nikki, on the Dallas County local option sales and service tax, are we going to be forever committed on that side to be paying off or to be lowering the tax levy?
50% of it by law has to be, 50% of both counties. Doesn't matter that it was Station 43, that piece, that's what we used it for.
Right, but the way we worded the question was the other 50% was to go towards.
It could go towards capital projects, which included debt service, economic development. Trying to remember what the other pieces of that.
Predominance of it, yes.
Okay, but
So-
it can't go towards capital improvement.
Yes,
Yes.
yes. Capital, which includes debt service. So that way, that's kind of the scenario of which I can either cash flow one, and I might not have enough on hand, so I might need to just issue debt for it, and I'll use it to service that debt.
Yeah.
So that's why it's both sides of that same piece. So with this note, if you would flip all the way back to the budget summary, this is one of those special revenue funds, right? So there is a separate page for seeing how all of these things flow together. Local option is on page 9. So then you can kind of see where the cash balance of those are at the top. It's actually printed really, really small. I apologize, even I have to pull out my glasses for that. So you can see the balance of each. So this is kind of where we're monitoring, okay, so if more came in than I planned on, the piece that goes to property tax relief, I need to transfer that out and spend it down. I need to use it to offset property tax. So that's where all of those numbers are coming in. The ones that are kind of shaded, they're color-coded on my side to show which bonds those are paying off, just for my internal. They'll be unhighlighted when we actually get to to the final budget. But you can see what I was referring to earlier in the fiscal 26 column. You'll see that we have funds coming in that at this time, we're not using them for debt. I'm direct flowing, there's $5 million right down there for capital projects. There's another 3.3 million. So we could buy down pretty significantly what our capital projects are for that year, assuming that costs stay the same or reasonable. So we probably will still have to backfill with debt, but we're making a huge dent in it. So that's kind of the point. So I'm still paying off a bond in that year, but I still have a ton left over to be able to start doing some of these capitals. So we're getting close. So that's why 27, 28, I'd feel real comfortable. We're going to be nearly fully cash flowing it. So, and this is also the page that is right before that. On 7 is the employee benefits. So it's the same balance sheet income statement activity. So you can kind of see what that, the ideal of that is it almost goes down to 0, which is why you see very little fund balance coming through for that. It's usually from interest earnings, and then I spend it the next year. So it's always, the idea is to burn it down. You levy what you need and you burn down the rest. So that's why a lot of those don't carry a balance. And then debt service is also on there on 11.
Nikki, this is all still foreign language, five years in, but so I'm still on page 9. If you move pages, I missed that. But so in the column that says increase, it says 250,000 under total revenue on the top section. So does that mean that we brought in $250,000 more than you projected?
So this is, the increase decrease column is what the increase over the prior budget. So this is comparing that FY 24-25 recommended column to the 24 adopted column. So the second column in compared to the recommended. So most of that is interest because rates are way better. So that's where the majority of it is. So we're relatively conservative on what that local option increase is going to be. And then we true it up the next year. So I don't want to overspend.
I mean, I'm sure you've told us this, but are the numbers better than they had been like post-COVID in terms of
Well,
money we're
they
bringing
were
in?
really good, and then they realized that they were paying us wrong and made that little correction. So now we're not growing that much. So that's why we continue to be pretty conservative, because they took 600 and some thousand
$600,000 right off the top.
of whoops that
Because
they
they made a
overpaid us for, even though we pointed it out. We're not going to go on that rant again. But if you look at the actual, we're pretty stable. So we brought in this year that just ended, we were at 2.6 million in Dallas and 7.7 million. So now they are paying us actual. So the other big thing to remember, last year, they stopped paying us based on state estimates. They used to pay us 90% of the state estimate. Now whatever you collect, they pay us the next month. So there's a ton of variation in what we're actually getting. There is no more true up. They run all year long based on estimate. And then in October, they would pay us a true up, which was
Significant.
one year close to $1 million. I mean, it's a huge variation. So it always looked like we were collecting a ton. Well, we should have been collecting that over the whole last year. So now we're just holding tight, just a bit of what I know we're going to probably bring in, but it could be more than that, because then we true it up the year before. I'd rather not overestimate what I think I'm going to get and end up short. I'd much rather catch it up the next year, because we still can spend it. It's the same purpose, just conservative nature.
The spending in December, you're going to get that soon, or you've already got it?
Yeah, so we should receive that in February. We usually get local option about the 11th. So hopefully,
Interesting.
yeah, there's a lot of variation this year. It used to be very predictable. You know, they would give us the estimate in August for what the whole next year would be, so we could plan pretty dang close. And then there was this huge, gravy train check of, here's all the catch up from the last 12 months. That's not happening anymore. And in fact, then they took it back from us. So.
And well, you might not, but this is one of those little nuances when you get onto local option sales tax. the state always reserved the right that if their estimates were correct, that you would then not get the money. I mean, there was no guarantee. It had to, and actually, I think now with the getting it more quickly, that it comes to us quickly and we have more control of those dollars. But again, it was a significant hit that all of a sudden is, I don't know if it was an accounting error, if there was something that the person who ran the program, they had one person who ran the program, who retired, that no one knew how to true it up, and they had an old accounting system. So I was at a meeting with several city managers. It was in like in August, 2 years, maybe 3 years ago. And we came in, they said, everybody's mad because everybody got hit. And they said, we'd like you to give us an accounting of this. And they said, we can't. Because the system is antiquated and the person who seems like only Bob, no offense. Yeah, I use Bob generically.
Bob.
Only George knew how to run that and George is no
Steve.
longer there. What's
Yes.
his name, Steve?
Yeah.
Okay, it was Steve. Poor Steve.
And the error was because they didn't have our population correct in the system, even though we pointed it out 2 years before that, are you sure that's right? Oh, no, it's just wrong on this spreadsheet. No, it was wrong.
Yeah,
Um,
finance
so, I
directors
mean,
kept on calling him out.
Yeah,
Are you
it
sure
was,
this is
it was
right?
bad. And so they had a nice little conference call when the guy retired and like, oh, guess what? We overpaid you. Yeah, yeah. Like West Des Moines was almost $2 million. So, I mean, and so they took that out of the whole next year. So our numbers are kind of calm, but then I think part of that was now they'll just pay you actual, because if they overpaid a community based on estimates, then they took it all back. And some of them physically had to write a check back to the state because they didn't have enough to offset it. Like it's big, it was a big exposure, I guess. So that's why we always wait till I have it in hand before we commit it in the next budget. So yeah. Any other questions on local option sales tax? Okay, so the last one that drives from local option sales tax is in the health and social services. This is the community services. It's the only department in here. Like I said, this is funded purely from local option sales tax, 10% of the 50% from Polk County. So the items that are in here, these are the ones that come through from hotel motel. We've identified that as the external funding grant to try to make that clear that's part of that process. So we have the 3 that were in and recommended for approval there. The UCAN contingent on several items that we've already talked about. The food pantry, Hunger Free Dallas County. Those are the 3 that came from that process. The other 3 have been carry forwards that we've had for several years. Neighborhood finances is a continuation of the existing program that you guys have funded over the last 3. This is a continuation of that, so another year. Section 8 housing. This goes, City of Des Moines actually runs our program for us.
What page are you on?
Oh, I'm sorry, HSS 5. So it's the Health and Social Services tab. Sorry, we completely jumped sections.
I was on the hotel motel page.
That was where we started. Those hotel motel ones are also on there, but it shows that they were switched over to community services to match up with that function. So Section 8 housing, this is our estimate in a heavy year, so we have confirmed, like for this year, it's just a couple $1,000s. It depends upon how much actual activity goes through there, but this is our placeholder. It's never really been more than that. Anything, I will point out, anything in here that is shown, if we don't spend it, I do an amendment at the end, and it transfers out to a community services capital project fund to sit and wait for you to determine what great things do we want to do in this area. So this is one that we don't roll it back into general fund. That was the indication back when we started this department, is that, for example, that first year we put in 75,000, I believe, for facilities determination, figure out what you want to do for food pantry, and you can. What do we want to do for that? Well, they didn't get that spent to do a study. We weren't sure what it was going to look like. So they didn't spend that, so we transferred it in, so it's sitting in a fund waiting for something to happen there. So we do have about 450 uncommitted in that's accumulated over the years. So if you don't get it spent here, I amend it and move it over there, so you don't lose these funds. So that kind of helps these are our best estimates, but if it doesn't get spent, it goes over. So if we don't know about it right now, that's what this 157,000 in 97, so we transfer out the MAC camp, that was kind of the general, that's one you would choose to continue to give 35,000 to the MAC camp to support that program. The rest of it, it's the difference between the total revenue I'm bringing in and what I'm going out, and that we don't have a name for. We don't have a specific project in mind. We can always, if it comes up, that's fine. You can spend it out of capital projects, but we go ahead and put the majority of it in here so that I can move that out. Does that make sense? Questions on any of that?
At the point where we were to decide to spend some of this that had been stored, saved, would we have to amend the budget to be able to spend that?
No, because it's in the capital projects fund, so that's, a $50 million budget. You could spend it all tomorrow and it still wouldn't blip on capital projects.
So on page HSS 4, what is the number, what line shows us what's in that unassigned?
It's not in here, it's not in here because this is part of general fund, so it doesn't carry a balance. I can give you what the capital project one is. It sits in a separate fund in capital projects, and each project has its own checking account. It carries over. So that is
So
not in this
the
document.
75,000 in year one that we set aside.
Right.
You said there's like 450 or something
Yeah.
in that unassigned
Yes,
pot.
sitting in that project. A project fund is effectively when I sell a bond and say I'm going to spend $1 million on this one, $1 million on this one, we literally go put that $1 million. It's in capital projects fund in the bucket of that, but each one has its own little mini bucket. How about that? So it's in its mini bucket, sitting in capital projects.
Finance 101.
Super, super technical terms there. The mini,
It's what?
I remember taking an accounting class, Nikki, and I don't recall buckets and mini buckets.
we're going to
but
call them
I'll-
buckets and mini buckets. I bet your accounting professor would actually approve that.
He probably would.
That is the government 101. Government fund accounting, it's buckets and mini buckets. That's literally what it is. So when we do the big capital projects budget, which is the only spot in here, back to that budget summary, there's capital projects in here. One of the green pages that I just gave you. 12? Yes, 12. So when we go to set that, so this is my lovely, look at this color-coded beauty. We go through the entire capital improvements program and schedule out, here's all of my projects, what am I spending, and all the revenue sources, and that flows into here. So that's why we do that as two separate documents, because there's a whole lot of stuff that comes into balance here. This is kind of just after the fact. What do I need to issue in debt? And what total expenditures. So we're recommending expenditures of 36 million. So that's why if we were going to spend 400,000, that's not going to.
Those don't have, the human service or community services doesn't have to be capital expenses.
No.
But it's still there.
So
in
it's-
capital.
It is,
Right, right.
these are, yes, because there are, like, Friends of the Park is in there. So it's a way, there's a very specific definition of what can be a special revenue fund versus what can not be. And it does not meet the requirement because it's a self-designated allocation. There's not a routine revenue source that qualifies it to be a special revenue fund, so I couldn't do that. So we put it in as a project, does not mean it has to be capital projects in any way. We just expense it out of there. It's not an asset that we'll capitalize. But it's a way to keep its mini bucket whole. Mini bucket is now my new favorite
Oh,
word. We're
I
gonna,
like the mayor's term better.
Well, there's actually a program called Smarty Pig. You just,
Yeah, it's an.
and what are you, what,
yeah, you put money in, you can have all these different accounts, you can label
and
accounts.
what's it called? I still,
Smarty Pig. They
Okay.
they pay interest. It's like a savings account. but
okay, well,
you can have
I'm going mini bucket. Mini bucket is now my coined phrase. So all of these mini buckets exist, and we keep a separate ledger on all of those projects. So at any given time, we go through it. When a project closes, opens or closes, we go through with engineering and say, is this project accepted by council? So it's closed. If they're a little bit over, a little bit under, the savings or excess from another project goes to close it out. So that's how we balance. All the mini buckets share if they're of the same purpose. So there's a
Sounds like
whole,
slush fund.
it is not a slush fund, it's a mini bucket. No, it's a way to keep it preserved for the intended use that you wanted it to do without losing it back into general fund.
Got it.
Okay, there we go.
Love it.
Restricted fund balance, but it's self-designated, so that's why it has to sit there.
Through selling Maybank.
So I think that is all of our actual departments, the capital projects. We won't really go through that because you've been through CIP, but this is a recap of what this big old document, this is what we need to do to bring it to fruition.
Say what West Bank's paying.
Okay, mini bucket 101 is all complete. Anything else that we need to talk about?
What?
You were smiling on that. Do you have that money spent already or what? You were smiling there earlier when she was going through the numbers. I said, do you have that money spent already?
Well, I have it all spent in my head. I mean,
That's going to be one hell of a party. over
yeah,
there at
we
Station
are
40.
having all sorts of fire-related items.
There you go. But those funds are sitting there available if certain opportunities for acquisition of properties or things like that.
Exactly,
That's what
yeah.
this stuff is for. So that is available.
No,
for
that's
you.
exactly what it was envisioned to be.
That's right,
Gives you maximum flexibility,
absolutely.
Exactly.
having to go through the normal,
Yeah. Got it.
and we are process people.
All right, those are all of our sections.
Community services, we
Services.
will need to hit that one as well.
That's what we just did.
We just did that.
Did that.
Oh, well, I've,
Go back to, I'm sorry, I apologize. What was your question?
Did we already do, did we do hotel motel fund on Saturday?
Yeah, we did that Saturday.
Never mind.
I don't
that's at
think
the
we
end of
talked about
Culture and Rec.
community services specifically, like the stuff on HSS 5,
That's what we just talked
because I
about.
still have some questions.
You're
Okay.
talking about the specific allocation?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Is that, I mean, is that where we're at now, or?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
that's what I was
Yes,
just,
we can go back to it.
You have the specific allocations there, and I think I know where you're going, because each year we make an allocation
Right.
to various groups and organizations, and that committee had met previously, and those recommendations are in here, and they're always, the mayor's committee makes those recommendations, and it's incorporated into the budget that gives you the chance as the council collectively to talk about those allocations. Also, please remember that the 2080 agreements that we enter into have specifics that you, as the council, can dictate as to what you want in those agreements. The agreements are required because it declares a public purpose for the use of those monies. So now you can say, we'd like you to use, for example, for UCAN dollars and food pantry dollars, we've designated for rent for facilities, very specific in there. And then other operational expenses, and that's a little bit more free-flowing, but then you make a determination through that 2080 agreement that if you're going to, as we release those funds, you're complying with that agreement after you sign it. It's essentially a promissory note. I'm going to do what you folks have tied these monies to. So just going to keep that in mind, because your discussion last year, you had a bit of a discussion as, we'd like to see certain provisions built into those 2080 agreements. That's something that when the 2080 agreement requirement came in, and quite honestly, from a staff perspective, we always looked at that and said, it's not a bad thing, because now you can hold them accountable. And then if there is the opportunity for, at one time, we were gracious enough to volunteer someone from council to sit on some of those boards, for ex officio type of environment, to ensure that you could it's like our participation in Bravo and our participation in the Catch Des Moines. You have a representation there to ensure that things are going the way that the members of council wanted those monies to be used for. So just keep that in mind, if you will, that the allocation of the dollars here are a number. It's not and you can refine that 2080 agreement, because this is monies that are made available beginning July 1st. So you have a little bit of time to think about that. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Can I ask my question?
Please.
Okay. So I bet I ask this question every year about the Metro Home Improvement Program. How do people know about that program? Because that's run by West Des Moines.
That is correct.
We put in, are we paid, or do we only pay for projects that are generated in Urbandale. Is that 29 an estimate of what we think we're going to do?
Yeah, that's our estimate. My understanding is it's an allocation based on per capita.
Per capita, it's a population.
So, no, then we do pay.
Yeah, we
the
pay,
fund,
and the monies are there, and it, then everybody within the participating communities have a chance to apply for it. It's administered by the city of West Des Moines through that program, and they are the ones that essentially push it out to the communities to say, and to the qualifying organizations, we have these monies available. So if you know somebody that needs a new furnace, if you know somebody that needs to have an improvement of some sort, you can make that allocation from that program.
I guess I'd like
Hit and
to,
miss program. I mean,
yeah, I'd like to maybe have a report or something from the person that administers it in West Des Moines about
Yeah.
how they advertise it, how it's utilized in Urbandale.
Our usage.
Yeah, that would be great. I had no idea that was a thing.
Yeah.
It's been around for, gosh,
A long time.
a long time. And again, it is a hit and miss program, and it is, you have to qualify for it, of course, but, but getting out there, quite honestly, we hand it off, and I will tell you that I just don't have a lot of firsthand direct knowledge on it. Every once in a while, I'll get a phone call saying that, well, I know we had a problem about 3 years ago, and they let me know that they had a person that was making accusations that they weren't being treated fairly by them, and it was an Urbandale resident. But that was probably the last time I had heard anything from them. But we will get the background information for you.
Yeah.
And then my other question is, this was front and center the last couple of weeks. The Civil Rights Commission was related to the action that we took, or the mayor took on our behalf with the legislature on the Iowa Civil Rights Act. I would really like to see the ramping up or revival of our Civil Rights Commission. Even though we are a kind of, I don't know if you called it a pass-through informational board, I think they could do a lot more in the community to help us reach some of our goals of being a more inclusive community, reaching out to new populations, marginalized populations. And if that requires more than $750, I guess I'd like to just see how we can revamp that group a little bit. I was inquiring with John, I think late last year, that they haven't had a meeting with quorum in an incredibly long amount of time. And I was involved in some email chains over the last week that showed the varied personalities on the commission, because they don't act as a commission. So I would like us to see that, revamp that board and get them, engaged with the library and with, as we talked about doing more work related to this is Black History Month. Next month is Women's History Month. We were talking about, I think the Civil Rights Commission is the perfect group to help us navigate some of those activities that we're wanting to see in the community with other partners like the library and whoever. Those were the two things. I mean, there's definitely other stuff, but I'm sure other people will bring those things up related to
Are you looking, and again, I understand the revamping and the re-energizing of their activity level. Are we thinking monetarily? I don't have a number.
I have no idea. I mean, I guess I don't recall seeing an amount of money to deal with the Plan and Zoning Commission or the Tree Board or something on a line item. It could be in here and I didn't see it, but it's explicitly called out on the Human Rights Committee So I'm seeing it, and that just seems very small amount of money. And so I'm not necessarily calling for more money, but if that would be what it took to
No,
them,
I-
for them to become more active, then I would, and maybe that's not and maybe it's a next year's budget thing after, we've
Yeah, I'm just trying to think
asked
of how
them
to
to
navigate that.
figure out what they want to be.
Is there a particular staffer who,
John Conyer from our staff is a staff member, and John and I have talked, John and I have talked about this previously, and he will share some joint frustration about their ability or inability to gather. He'll try to get them together, and there'll be schedule conflicts, and there will be, quite honestly, there've been discussions when they do meet about what they should or shouldn't be doing, and there are divergent opinions on the board. And so, having said all that, if the council would like to re-energize, repurpose something with them to be more outward-facing, that's probably.
Yes.
Outward-facing, and then it's a challenge to them how they can get it done.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones that would have to participate more directly. They're the ones that would be that face of that effort.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's what I would like to see.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody.
When you say, what did you say earlier? Informational commit, or what?
In general, you have civil service commissions in communities that some are active, depending upon the size. I'll use Des Moines as an example, and I'll use, like, in my Eastern Iowa days, Davenport, for example, I think, and those are just ones I'm familiar with, that they have a much more proactive and a much more investigatory type of process, where they will take complaints and they will actually dig into that complaint to say a landlord discriminated, an employer discriminated. Those are probably the two biggest ones I can think of that I recall seeing things on. And so those are ones that they actually do the investigation and say, yes, in fact, your landlord discriminated against you for whatever reason, and you were charged more, your deposit wasn't, you can get the picture.
Yeah.
And what we're an informational board is that we sit there and we would put out information to say, as Bridget would say, we're going to celebrate the diversity of the community, and these are the things that we want the community to know. And we're partnering with the library, and we're pushing this information out to say, everybody should be aware of this, and everybody should be cognizant of the importance of this event or this month or whatever it might be. It is also, if somebody walks in or contacts us and say, I believe I'm discriminated against, then we would make that connection to the state, and then they do the investigation of the work.
Okay, so there are distinctions between our commission and the commissions that are more active as like an investigative body. There's a distinction there, not just that one group is more proactive than the other.
Yes, and I will tell you, I have a level of ignorance on that as far as if there's a population threshold.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, okay,
29,000.
29,000, okay. So we have that choice. And so the city has decided, or has in the past said, this is the extent. Now, I do not know how much effort there is in that, in the investigative standpoint. As you can imagine, there would be a significant more than we're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a level of quality of service that you want to make sure that's available. And just by the sheer volume, you would think that, in general, that the state would have more resources available to it to do those things and have more clout.
there are options for local or state, there's no regional approach here.
Can we contract with City of Des Moines, or have we?
Well, we
done that?
contract with the Iowa, we probably could, but we contract with ICRC right now.
Okay.
You're thinking, is there the contract capability with the other, and I don't know if West Des Moines does it, but Des Moines is the one I can think of the most.
Yeah, Des Moines,
I can find out to see if there are contractual services available. I'm assuming that you would pay a fee.
I mean, and
based-
I'd like to
I
know.
think John Conyer did that last year, that he asked about contracting with them or investigated it, and they said no.
And again, if he
For
did,
Des Moines.
that's a quick turnaround answer for us, for you.
Because I mean, I have no idea if we have complaints in our community.
I don't know, Jack about it.
I will
I
find
mean,
out.
would John know?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Because they would start with him and he would make the referral. I mean, I just,
Or the state would report it back.
Yes.
Yeah.
okay.
Because the state, someone might just go to the state right off the bat.
Okay.
You never know that. They could come back and I don't know if John gets a report saying that someone within your community made this complaint against an employer or landlord, et cetera. But let me find out and get the specifics from John about what numbers that are generated that we handle in-house and what information he gets back from the state and what options there are. If you already looked at it for contractual services, what options there are for you there. And then, of course, the challenge to re-energize yourself.
But I don't even know how, is it appointed by the mayor? Okay.
Yes.
If I may, they did post an agenda. They do have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow.
Oh, fantastic.
So it looks like there's some good groundwork already in place to start some good discussion.
That's great.
I will share this with John before his meeting. They have something to talk about.
It was my understanding that that meeting was set up at the encouragement of the newest member to actually, for them to just meet each other. So,
That's a great start.
which is a great start.
All right, yeah.
Names
So,
and faces in front of each
yes.
other always is helpful.
I would also add, I just looked up that Metro Home Improvement item, so we've been in that since 2007. And it alternates each year is the off year is just the admin fee, which is about 8,000 of it. And then the opposite year is the admin fees plus matches. So it does maybe indicate then that here's the result of people that have taken it, because it's our matching funds, because then those years we pay $26,000, $27,000, $28,000. It looks like it goes up a little bit each year. So this would be the year that we would have matching funds that are put into the program. So we can get more detail, but I just looked it up to double check how that actually works. So I would guess that we should be pretty close to 29 in 2023, we paid 28.4.
Okay.
So
Handled through Steve's department, I'm sure he'll be encouraged to make a report back to council.
Okay.
Or we could have the administrator from West Des Moines come talk to us directly, because they're the ones that actually know about it.
Joint presentation, maybe?
Yes.
All right, we'll make sure that happens. We'll extend that gracious invitation.
Very gracious.
Anything else?
Were there any other questions on HSS 5 when it came to those dollar amounts that we've identified? Again, we'll be back to you with the 28 heat agreements. You may want to think what, if anything, you'd like to include in the language. My goodness, we're done with it. We've gotten through the list. All right. Again, want to be cognizant of the time, but I think if you're prepared, we're going to start now to go backwards. And pardon me, if there's any other questions on this one, if there's not, what we have, particularly for our new council members, what the next process is that we go through and we answer any particular questions that you have financially. We know that you had questions such as what we just discussed on the Civil Rights Commission. That is not necessarily a monetary issue at this point in time, so we tend to segregate those. The issues that are monetary, that are included in the budget that need to be considered for your next fiscal year, the monetary issue associated with the budget is what we're going to focus on. We have been taking notes. Curtis has 10 to 12 pages of notes for things that are non-budgetary or items that came up. 14 pages. So,
Sorry, Curtis.
and then Nikki has notes and I have notes. I think I had about 8. Now, I put one note on one page, so I'm a paper waster. But we're going to get together after this tonight. We're going to look at the issues that are not budgetary that you had questions on. Again, I get back to the question that Blake, that you had that kind of got us thinking about, well, what's the preventative maintenance plan? What's on it type of thing. Again, things that we're projecting outward that you can, oh, you're going to address these things in the next 5 years. Those are the type of things that we'll bring back to you. We'll accumulate our list, and then we're going to send it out to you. and just make sure that we hit everything that you thought about or that you had a time to think about. And then once you approve the list, then we're going to start working on it. And they'll come back to you periodically. It could be a visit from our friends at the Metro Home folks, could be anything. We will make those arrangements to bring that information back to you throughout the year. Because I will tell you that as much as we can get some of this information, it won't happen within the next 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So it will happen incrementally through the year. So we will have that list, we'll check things off. But one of the things I do want to remind, again, for our 2 new council members, is that we'll recirculate that list. If something that we've missed, please add it. And then once we get the list from you, then we'll take it up and take it for a walk. Okay? Very good. So let's start.
Can we take 5? I'm sorry. Or can I just go?
7:45.
Yeah.
It is already, jeez.
Are you kidding?
You get your car fixed?
Oh, hell.
You guys would be a flight risk, so we would have locked the doors behind you. Anyway, so let's begin. So hopefully you've taken notes and you've looked at the material that we've given you. And so again, the summary issues associated with the fund balance, et cetera, we'll put those off to the side. But really, let's just start with operational expenses that are outlined in each of the department's budgets. And the budgets that are submitted to you for your consideration, we'll go tab by tab and have you look at those. And if there's anything in there that is monetarily related, that's what you should discuss. If there's something that you want to make sure that we revisit because you want more information, or it's wouldn't it be great to have more of this, and it's not a monetary issue, but it's just an informational issue, send that our way too. But we'll focus on the monetary part of it. Our goal is to get done tonight and get it so we can begin our process internally of getting everything set as Nikki outlined on Saturday, and to meet all of our date requirements. And I do apologize, I did say April 16th. It is not the 16th, as you corrected me, it's the 24th. So I do apologize for that. So I'm still on previous year's process. So having said that, let's begin under the Public Safety tab. Again, personnel-wise, there is an officer plan for January of '25. We have no, it's not in this one. That's right, we took them out, yes. I was just going to say I was so focused on when we made that. So there is no officer plan at this time. We have the openings. When the openings are filled, I'm sure that we'll see future budget recommendations, as the chief pointed out, that will have additional people. But there is nothing here for January 25. That is in the city manager's office. Excuse
And
me.
that is 9 opening? Or is that across public safety?
No,
9
9
police.
in the police only,
Okay.
yes.
So we had several promotions
Yes, in the police.
in the police. Does that open up more positions or no?
Everything is promotional within the police department except the chief's position. So by civil service, we have those promotional opportunities and they fill. For example, Sergeant Chad Underwood is just promoted to captain. And so
Right.
that left a sergeant's position. So we backfill with the numbers that we have and the opportunities.
So there's, with the stuff that's moving, people that are moving up right now,
Right,
They backfill the
it's
bottom.
still just 9
yes,
people
Yes.
that are
cumulative.
opening.
So now they would be new officers. If, for example, the Underwood, he moved up to captain, so somebody will move from officer to sergeant, and then we'll have an opening at the lowest level at officer.
Yes.
But that doesn't change
Correct.
the 9.
No, it's
Okay.
built into this. All right, I'm going to kind of keep things going, so if it's speak now or forever hold your peace. All right. So we're done with we're done with police. Fire EMS. The chief reviewed with you the overview of the reorganization opportunities that we have to the battalion chiefs, eliminating the other positions. This was a charge that I gave, pardon me, this was actually something, as he mentioned, that was first brought up by Chief Holt. Part of the big sticking issue there that we didn't have an agreement with the city of Clive. They were not in agreement to his reorganization plans that they had a financial interest in. So we held it last year. Chief Cardwell has made those, there's a new chief down in Clive. They're more amenable to the changes that he explained to you. And so that was one of the charges that I gave him right off the bat. When I appointed him, I said, finalize that opportunity. Yes or no? Let's make some decisions. And to his credit, he worked out that process. And so those changes are incorporated in this budget as well, personnel-wise. We're going. All right. Public safety emergency preparedness. There's no people here, it's just equipment. Good? All right. Animal control. This is our contract that we have with Polk County to provide those services and to to the storage, the
Boarding,
housing,
Boarding,
thank
kennel.
you. I'm sorry.
Any word.
Boarding of wayward animals through furry friends. It's interesting, they are, as the chief mentioned, we're on them diligently now so they don't bill us a year later. I still can't figure out how they operated without collecting that money, but that's up to them. All right, any animal control issues? Police and fire retirement, again, this is our expenses associated with that. All right, we're into Public Works tab. We'll begin with roadway maintenance. All right, moving on, street lighting. I assume that you still want us to light the streets, so we're going to keep this out there. All right.
The one question I would throw back that was on my list in Public Works,
Nope.
the PCC patching. So this was one of those projects he mentioned was coming to bid or to set the public hearing at tomorrow's council meeting, and we will have the public hearing on March 5th. Comfortable accepting the bids on March 5th? That will be before the budget is approved. I'll call those 3 projects out as he mentioned them, but good to go? He's okay to keep it on the 5th? Okay.
Good point, because that's one of those things, as we talked about the debt, we're making a commitment.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Pat. Lots of spots.
It
in
is
the street,
pothole
but
season,
yes.
Larry, so we're going to get out
That's true.
there.
It is.
Uh.
It's in other cities. So.
All right, traffic safety. Any issues there? Engineering services.
This is where we're adding the engineering tech.
I'm sorry?
This is where we're adding the engineering tech.
To replace, this is the GIS is moving out of this
Oh, yes.
department. And the position that stays there will be an engineering tech of some
Yes.
kind.
Okay, moving on. Solid waste collection. The sweetheart of the city, let me tell you. 97% approval rating.
We were driving through Madrid on the way up to Iowa State yesterday, and they have hot pink trash cans. And Tony suggested that we move there solely based on the fact that they have hot pink trash cans.
It was,
Sanitary sewer and wastewater.
But that's a monetary item, though.
is that a?
Thank you.
This is the old fashioned hook on the stage. I'm pulling you off. Sanitary and wastewater. I will share, Curtis, take down pink garbage cans, please, so we can address that, so we can give the guys down there something to ponder. Sanitary sewer and wastewater. Stormwater utility fund.
This is where next year we are interested in upping our game somehow. We haven't figured out how.
We talked about that today, because this was one of those that if you're going to make a move come July 1st, is that you have, getting it tied to a specific plan, and you can let the money accumulate, but you need to then have a plan afterwards. So if you're going to raise this, our discussion was it really should have a plan associated with it versus raising it to accumulate for the plan to come. So it's chicken and the egg, so to
Yeah,
speak.
and I don't know that we necessarily are even talking about raising the stormwater utility fee per se. It's more this balance that we have in infrastructure to emphasize stormwater and stream restoration projects.
Okay,
And just wanted, that was a capital improvements recommendation, just wanted it noted that this is not enough for next year.
yes. And that's fine. And we discussed that as well, is that there is the two components of that discussion, a more robust plan
Yes,
and then the funding component of it.
yes.
So if there is not, we're talking funding now, if there's not a consideration or a consensus to look at a funding change right now.
Yeah, you know, you're making a good point.
Okay.
Because we don't have a fund for a plan. We haven't funded a plan. We haven't funded any kind of a stormwater management, stream restoration plan in the western 2/3 of.
No, the plan that we have in place is east of 86th Street.
Right.
And that has the detail that has been shared with those of you on the CIP committee. You're correct. West of 86th Street and streams, no. We do our own internal stream evaluation and we go out and look at things. But that's on an annual basis and it is limited to financial resources we have and the time that we have to mitigate them. So if you're looking for a more robust plan, then again, it kind of gets that chicken and egg situation. So if you're looking to allocate a certain dollar amount to having outside engineering or expertise assistance, I don't know what that number might be, but now's the time to at least identify if we need to come back and if there is room within this, Nikki, to say, we can take from this $50,000 for a plan, and I know that's not going to be enough, but some dollar amount. If we have that capacity within this right now.
Yeah, so the stormwater utility fund is an enterprise fund, so it has its own balance. So yes, if you want to add it, that has nothing to do with our levy or anything like that. The fee thing that we're talking about obviously is, yes, slow incremental growth versus do the plan and then realize you've got $100 million again of improvements to make, but we didn't raise the fee. So that was our point of discussion is we can start working on the plan, but we don't have enough money under the current revenue stream to fund much more than what we've already got. With the CIP that's planned out, that balance will go away. So that was our proactive, like, do you start incrementally raising it? We get a plan and then yes, I need to go up $3 or $4. No idea, but we've typically gone up $1 incrementally if we are anticipating pulling on some bigger profile projects. The money is not there to do those past the CIP that's already in place.
Right. So is there interest? Am I the only one here that
No.
sees a need?
I mean, I can't sit through another CIP and get
Yeah.
harassed, for lack of a better term, for us not doing enough. So do we need to do, is it
we
a
need to do
study?
anything with the budget here
I don't
to-
know.
Yes, I would say you put in a professional services and then line 23 that we would put in an estimate. I feel like it cost more than 50 when we did
I'm sorry?
I don't remember what the one cost that we did on the east side piece. I would probably say put in $100,000.
Right.
To give us cushion, 150
So if
Okay.
we put in 150 for a study,
To allow for the study, but then my counter would be, do you want to pursue looking at a stormwater rate increase? We're at $7 now per household per month. And
dollar
the-
generates
and,
about $1 million.
Our total revenue that we bring in is about 2.9 million is what our amount is now. And that's at $7 for residential, and it drops to $6 after 100 ERUs for commercial.
Right, for
So there's,
commercial.
so the last time we raised it, $1 at each level.
Would it make more sense to? Does it make more sense to get a study and understand what we're talking about? And then make an assessment as to what we need to do for resources. And that could be then where we would look at that versus putting it into this budget.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that's
it's just a
why-
whole year away.
Yeah, I
So,
was gonna say, that's why AJ was allocating the 150, right, was
yeah, to do the plan.
for the
The
study.
150 for the study, and
Yeah.
part of our discussion was, if there is an anticipation, do you bring it up incrementally each year like $1, or do you say, no, next year we're going to raise it $3 or $4? You see what I mean?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
But you always look for rationale. I mean, that's one of the things that
That's-
people look to us and look to you as, well, why are you doing this? Because of this reason, whatever that rationale may be for whatever thing you're doing. So it's always good to have that in your hip pocket, that we have X amount of expenses that we need to address. Now, you have over $100 million of expenses on the east side
Right.
that you already know exist.
Yeah.
And so
So
you
there's some
certainly don't have
justification
the
there.
resources. But if you want to do the study first, and that will drive a more comprehensive review of your financials,
I think that makes sense, because then there's places on the west side that are still developing, and maybe there's some things that we can get ahead of if they aren't already. I recognize our engineering staff are probably already getting ahead of some of those, but,
Sure, they're trying, but it probably needs a broader look.
and then we can figure out from there once we know the numbers.
We just need to be able to go into next year's budget with a better response to how we're making a more concerted effort to address the identified problems. And, I feel like John has a good handle on how he's created the response, in terms of not tearing up the entire eastern portion of Urbandale at one time.
right?
But how that translates back to our communication with the public and with how it's presented through the CIP process, I think we need to figure that out over the next year.
Well, we don't have to spend it, right?
Absolutely.
So it seems
It accumulates.
prudent to set it aside,
The 150.
set aside a 150, yes.
Okay.
And then dig a little deeper and see if we really need it, see what, I'd hate to not have it available to us if we've sat down with engineering and they go, yeah, we really would benefit from this. We really haven't had that discussion.
If we're going to have it in there, though, we need the mechanism to fund it too. So.
Yeah, a GOB is, your general obligation bond is your only other option. So that's when we were talking about, yes, I'd like to cash flow stuff, but adding $100 million worth of stormwater is going to have to be bonded. So short of using these revenue dollars to directly affect that, effectively the $5.5 million you have in fund balance now, it's already spoken for in the CIP. We will spend that down over the portion that we've got, and we're not even, we're supplementing. So that's totally a policy decision. I mean, we absolutely can bond for it, 100%, not $100
Are you
million.
talking about the 100 mil? I mean, I think John has some list somewhere of the top priorities and how we're addressing them from the $100 million list.
Right.
And not all of them are worthy of us fixing right now.
Correct.
And
Yeah,
again, it would
good
tear
about
up,
that.
but
That's
it'll
what we
be tear
studied.
up
It's
the
been
whole
prioritized.
side of the
Absolutely.
town. So
But it'll be
I'm
somewhere
not
between
advocating
that.
us doing anything more than getting more information so
Okay.
that next year's budget, we can have, this is what we're doing to increase our,
To justify an increase.
yes, to increase or refocus or whatever that we've been trying, we did the study, the $100 million, and I think we need to be able to show how we're tackling that. And it's not getting through to at least the CIP committee, how it's working.
So put the money in, and we can address it.
The 150.
Yes.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If we're putting that in, we need to have a mechanism to pay for it too. So.
Well, I don't think we have to pay what, we can do the projects that we can afford to do, or.
No, I'm talking about the study itself, the 150.
Oh, I thought she said
Say
had
there
that
was money
covered.
within the.
We'll add it to the stormwater utility fund. There's $5 million in fund balance there.
Okay. There is enough fund balance there to.
So yes, we can use it for that. What I'm talking about is that 5.5 million, the projects in the CIP for the next 6 years are going to spend all of that. So we've done the 100 million, whether or not it's somewhere between 0 and 100, I have no idea. What's doable, that's not even contemplated in most of this stuff.
Right.
So
Right.
at some point, we'll either have to bond for it or we have to raise.
Stormwater utility.
We just have to be able to tell the story better. I mean, 2 years ago, this particular member of the CIP wanted us to zero out our parks budget and put it all towards stormwater.
That was not I.
Yes. And, this last year, it was not that extreme, but it was a significant admonishment, which the whole commission was really, got behind, but I'm getting tired of getting admonished year after year that it appears that we're not doing enough. And I know we're doing as much as our city can handle, and maybe we need to figure out how we can increase that some, but I mean, I have no thought that we're going to, bond for $1 zillion to.
Part of the point of doing a study might in fact give us leverage for some level of grantsmanship that we haven't been able to pull off yet, especially if we're doing some sort of proactive stream restoration or stream preservation or protection piece out in the western piece. And so that's what's in my head, is that there's probably some real opportunities to garner resources with the right kind of study for the western part or the west of 86th part. And that's why I don't want to try and raise a rate. I want to see what a study will show us in terms of priority pieces that need to be addressed and what resources might be available for pursuing that.
Very good. Again, I'll apologize for shortcutting you, but if there's $150,000 agreeable, that we have the funds available to do that, we will include that in the budget.
And let's move on.
And we'll move, thank you. Thank you, appreciate it. All right. Public Works Administration and Engineering. Let's move on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, Health and Social Services, Community Services, we just got through with that activity. Was there anything that you wanted to change?
Bob, we're talking tomorrow about UCAN.
Yeah.
Are we going to be able to, I don't think the money here is at issue. It's the 2080.
Yeah.
Okay,
If you're good with the dollar amount, again, 28 agreements will follow.
okay.
Going, gone. All right, Culture and Recreation. Library. All right. I'm sorry.
Where was Parks and Rec doing the solar study?
In building maintenance.
In building maintenance, okay. I'm working at a distinct disadvantage because I did not know we were going to go back through this whole notebook, or I would have put my notes on stickies inside the notebook, and that's what I will do next year. So forgive me, but there's a few things.
As I said, it's drinking from a fire hose.
Yes.
All right, Culture and Library.
Looks good.
We want to make sure Bridget gets the Britney Spears book. Is that,
I have it in I talked to Nicholas about my book that comes out tomorrow, and there'll be more available, so we're good.
okay.
No, just all Bridget's desires on Libby are available right now.
Okay, are you going to release the book of the,
Tomorrow.
tomorrow is the day?
It is the
the
day.
unveiling?
It's on the agenda, yeah.
Okay, very good.
But for significant more chocolate, maybe
You can be bribed?
I'll yap.
All right, there is a price.
No, you won't.
No, I won't.
There is a price, she says. All right, anything with the library?
Going on.
All right, we will move on past the potential bribery of Councilmember Carberry Montgomery, and we'll move on to Cultural and Parks Recreation.
The Parks Trails was another of the projects that will be coming forward for bids that will be accepted, the trail improvement project. Yes? Gotcha.
All right. Nothing there? Okay, grounds maintenance. Nope. Cultural and recreation.
And that MAC camp conversation, that's not something we need to imminently talk about in terms
I
of.
got a response from Molly.
Oh, okay.
I'm accumulating that with the non-budgetary items, but I believe it answers the question that was raised about their emphasis in areas.
Sweet.
All right. Cemetery. Very good. Senior Recreation Center.
On the aside list, I'd like, after they implement the new funding,
Thank you.
I'd like to get a report back on if there are any significant changes to registration
Enrollment
patterns.
and registrations. So Euro,
Non-resident
I'm
fee?
sorry, yeah, we will,
About the non-resident fee?
Yeah.
Okay.
so that is a go.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
mean,
We're going to institute the non-resident fee as outlined with when Jan was here on Saturday.
Yeah.
All right, and we'll get a report back to see what kind of effect it had.
and is someone going to respond directly back to that individual? I think we told her that,
The one I had communications with previously?
yeah, I mean, I think we pushed it saying this is a budget
Is it budget
discussion,
issue?
so.
Yes, I
If you
will.
can circle
I'll hunt
back.
up that email and I'll get back with her. Jane, if I'm not mistaken. So email Jane.
Search for Jane.
Yep, I'm pretty sure that was it. But we will find and we will communicate. Anything there on Senior Recreation Center? Okay, Cultural and Convention. This is the allocation of the hotel motel funds. Please note there the future policy discussion on the Urbandale Special Events sponsorship. We gave you that opportunity for whatever comes our way. All right, good. Community and Economic Development. Under CED 3, this is Economic Development. Director and one specialist. We have an intern coming in this summer for a 12-week time period usually. Big ticket item here, of course, was our pledge for the airport, which I am going down on Wednesday to get an update, so I'll provide a synopsis of that update to you folks when I'm done. All right? All right, community development, this is Steve's operation. This is where we have the new building inspector position budgeted. Okay.
Yeah, keep going.
Thank you.
Yep.
Tax increment financing fund, there's just the explanation of the fund itself, so I'm assuming that there's no other questions and no monetary effect to the budget.
Yep.
All right, general government summary. Mayor and council.
Yep, looks good.
Is,
Here we go.
With the Urbandale resident high school graduation thing, do we want to just change the wording of that to make it not commemorative item and just make it engagement?
That's
rather-
what,
That was in our notes already.
that's what we
We're-
had in my notes.
To
Yeah.
do the generic down the wording to, on the high school graduation item.
Non-monetary.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Or
sounds
to
good.
burn the mortgage party.
Okay, any other comments? Again, I sent out tonight more information on the DC trip.
I saw it. Thank
So
you.
those of you who are interested, keep Nikki and I apprised, or Nikki and I are Curtis apprised about what you're doing so we can make sure that you don't get left on the tarmac. Anything else there?
Nope.
City Manager Fund. We share the position with the administrative services person, or the specialist, that Nicole made reference to, that has been a big help to her. And this is we called it a management analyst, but it will be whatever the appropriate language is for the January 1st hire.
This is a non-monetary. Could I have a report of what a national search consists of and is?
Sure can.
Thanks.
Okay, anything else there?
I'd say maybe add into that what a local search will look like,
Okay,
just for comparison.
I will break that down as best I can.
Thank you.
Anything else?
And, oops, sorry, is that just classified as a search? I'm just trying to quick find the wording of that here. It's just recruitment.
Yeah. It's over here.
Oh, okay. So the line over here would be 20, okay, sounds good.
22.
Sweet.
Got it. Anything there? Whoops.
This may have been under Nicole's budget and I missed it, or your budget, but do you have budget for an election?
Yes. Oops, I'm sorry, Nicole.
I didn't recall seeing that, but
It's in the clerk's budget.
that could be something that we have to do next year.
20,000.
You have an election for 25 anyway, because you have council members and the mayor who
Right,
are up.
but we may be required to do a special election to replace
It's on the same
one of
day
our
anyway.
members.
This budget, yep, we always include at least one election. We did increase the allowance that we put in there because we
No,
are seeing
yeah.
a freeze.
The November 25 election will be in fiscal
That'll be,
26.
right.
No,
So the
yeah.
current budget we're in, we actually had budgeted for 2 elections in case we had an annexation or any
Yeah.
number of items that may come up. So
Okay.
we do always keep one in there.
Okay, that hit me today and
Yeah.
I didn't recall seeing it, so.
question.
And I thought that was the policy, was to always have one in there.
Keep one in our hip pocket.
And on that management analyst note,
Yes.
we're going to be kind of engaged with helping to define that person. Was that sort of,
Yes, because it'll be,
Functionality.
as you complete your strategig plan and you
Got
have
it.
priorities that are going to rest with my office.
got it?
And the impetus was that our plates are full now. And so in order to do things that you'd like to do moving forward that aren't identified yet, a new body may be.
Perfect.
And again, that's why we put it half year.
Yeah,
'Cause
perfect.
again,
Thank you.
Yep. General finance and records. This is the finance department.
Got it.
Okay, I'll see.
I'm just kidding.
No, you stay there.
She really wants to go
No,
home.
no, no.
Don't.
Looks
Don't
good.
even joke,
Got everything else.
don't even joke about that, please. Because I'll get in my car and I'll keep driving.
No, I think that we all would.
See all the color drain out of Addison's face?
No, this is the most important page, right?
Feel the love, feel the
Oh,
love.
I'll say the second most important. Maybe the third. Okay, no.
on.
This is
It looks great.
great group of people. Keep them here, keep them happy. I have decided that I am going to spend money and get Vivian a pair of socks. She wears no-sew socks, and then she complains about her feet being cold. So I give her a hard time. She's a great person, but I just, and a Luther grad to be.
I will.
Yeah, so yes.
We stick together.
Yeah, you stick together. Okay. All right. Anything else in finance? If not, we're going to move right on. General Government and Technology, this is the group you really don't want to mess with because they'll drain your IRA and you won't know about it. So be careful with this, guys.
It looks great.
Okay?
Super. Can we give them more?
They're listening as we speak. All right, HR,
It's good.
thank you. City Clerk,
Fantastic.
fantastic, got it, yep. Person who brings chocolate, we don't want to mess with. All right. Legal Services, I think I have your message. I've got my notes. I will confer with the mayor, and we'll talk about this as we move forward. And again, yes, I'm sorry.
Sorry, you can finish your thought. No.
Well, I would also like to recognize that this year, as I mentioned, Bob will be of service for 45 years for the community. He's done a great job for us.
It's important.
Are there any costs associated that we need to consider with the search of a new attorney or anything like that?
I don't know, maybe a lunch for the mayor and I'm not sure, but
I mean, at most, we may put out if we decide we want to do an RFP of some sort, we can, but that's. we can
That's-
do that internally.
yeah, I agree with the mayor that, again, for our two new council members, when you look at professional services, legal, engineering, architectural, Iowa law allows you to make a selection. Typically, we do RFPs for big projects, but you have the latitude to make a selection not based on price or its qualifications of the most qualified candidate, and it gives us, you, much more latitude to pick the person that you feel is the right fit for whatever you wanted to do.
Yeah,
Okay,
well, actually, it worked that way.
general support services.
Looks great.
All right. Very good. Government marketing position. We have the operational issues here. You talked about there was a request, there was a suggestion that we push that to January 1st when there is a more defined marketing program outlined. The challenge for the director now to put forward the plan that he thinks needs to be fulfilled. Also, we're challenging him is that what services you'll need internally and what service you can do externally. He's good about finding those out. As we mentioned, we do a number of outside services that have been very beneficial for us and very productive for us. So it's that combination. But that's a challenge to find out what is it we want to do, what you want to do, what more you want to do. I think there was a discussion, January seemed to be a reasonable time frame to at least identify that position. That's a penny increase in the levy.
I have been thinking about this a lot, and I would challenge us to start the position in July, and I would also challenge us to find a way to do it without having to increase the levy.
What
do you want to cut?
Well,
amount would we need for that?
80,000.
80,000.
Was that 80,000 full compensation, including
Yeah.
hybrids and
That was
benefits
our
and all that?
closest guess based on which skill set you.
I mean, I
There are items
guess,
within the budget.
I think there's places within, if there was another body there, that the budget could be reallocated to some degree, some of the stuff that's outsourced. I don't have something off the top of my head, but I mean, and these are different budgets and you understand this a bit better than I do, but, you know, we're not likely going to be able to fill the police positions in that time. Can some of that money come over to fill over here?
If you want me to remove positions from the police budget, because otherwise you can't show the funding and intend them to be filled. So you'd have to remove it. Savings down the road could offset some of it, but ultimately you have to be comfortable with what you're funding at the onset of the budget.
And
You can't rely on savings at the end of it to assume to cover it. It's in two different functions.
do I remember hearing the chief correctly when he said something like we're down 9, but that flows into overtime or something, like
Yeah,
how
because
does?
you have to, there's still minimum staffing to have, the number of people on the street at any given time. So they pull in overtime. So it's not direct savings. You're paying time and a half for existing people to come in and backfill those. So not 100%, obviously.
You're not pulling in all 9 positions worth of
Correct.
salary back in.
Absolutely. Yeah, we would burn through people really quick if you did that.
He had a specific amount he shared with you on Saturday, and I can't think of what it was now, but he did indicate that there was an increase in that number. I'm sorry.
That was a long time ago.
Oh, Saturday, yeah.
A lot of information.
Yeah, but it is a lot of information, but yes, that's what typically happens when you offset, when you have a significant amount of vacancies, you'll have the overtime, and that's understandable, obviously, but yes, we make adjustments for that.
Is there time to ask Derek what might be able to be shifted within his budget? I'm looking at outreach initiatives, videography, recognizing you don't know who you're going to hire. You have your professional consulting and copywriting. Copywriting you're still going to have, but there might be some, I just don't know the extent of what those budget items.
So if you look at his requested column, so he actually prepared 2 different budgets, one with it and one without it. So that requested column actually reflects what those anticipated differences are. You'll notice it most down in the operations. So salaries is higher, yes, but the operational items would have been 144 versus 152 without it. So there is some offset in there, and that is net reflected, so it ends up taking it down to about $60,000 net differences. It was one of those, depends on what the skill set is. Would they be able to do all the videography, the graphics, all those kind of things? But he did prepare it that way. So
Fantastic.
that's what's reflected.
Okay, so it's a $60K difference.
Yes.
Depending on what we get, yes.
Yes, assuming it was being able to be fully leveraged.
My recommendation would be, working toward it, but also, let's get into the fiscal year a little bit and see what other savings we might have at that point too. So, maybe a fall hire, it may be something like that. We have a lot of moving parts right now, so.
I would like us to hire this person sooner than later.
Well, I understand that. I get that. So I'm not saying not do that, but I think we need to have a plan to do it.
I agree.
And if we get our plan together, is a budget amendment to reflect that, that would be how it would be done if we wanted to hire sooner rather than wait until the next round?
Yes, so the caveat there is we don't normally amend, so just require a second amendment, because we would have to, whenever you wanted to do that, we would need to go ahead and amend at that time, so fall or whatever, and then I do my normal one in April, so we wait till most of the fiscal year is done, so it would just require 2.
Okay.
Big deal.
Other than the publication and the process to do it, I mean, it's about a week's worth of work.
It's about a week's worth of work.
Yeah, ish.
And so we couldn't really do it earlier without you having to do a week's worth of work to amend it?
So we could wait as long as so the amendment works in functions, right? So this is in general government. So everything that is in general government counts against that. So until we start to run out of money in total, so the hard thing is most of that budget is insurance, which goes out the door immediately. So as soon as we start to approach that, so even if you wanted to hire it, say we have a great savings year back into general fund, and you want to go ahead and do that, I probably wouldn't have to amend until probably October-ish. I mean, we'd have a good several months that we're not going to go over budget in there because I haven't paid the entire salary, even within marketing. They're not going to spend their entire budget right away, but they can't exceed the budget without an amendment.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Why wouldn't we be able to just use 80,000 out of the general fund?
Because you budget by function. So I have to have an expenditure number in there. You cannot exceed that. General fund doesn't matter. Function matters. So the state doesn't care what fund is paying for anything. They care about public safety, public works. So this is general government. So amongst all the 28 funds that we have, all of the general government type count against that number. So It's general fund dollars, yes, but I still can't exceed general government expenditures with that amendment.
So if we don't spend 40 grand for recruitment, then we have 40 grand that's still in general government.
That is a true statement.
Okay, got it.
In that
Or
category.
if you don't all go to DC. I mean, there's ways to do it, but something would have to come out. So if you want to budget it in and you're anticipating doing that, I think that that is prudent to go ahead and put it in there and just know that we're really going to try to find things to not spend that are currently in the budget, because otherwise you're looking at the levy to do that ahead of time. You're banking on savings.
Well, there's high school commemorations,
There's $2,500 for that, absolutely.
and I'm pretty sure I'm not going to DC, but.
No, I'm not.
And this is recurring. So this isn't something where we just say, we're not going to do this one year, it comes back.
No,
The DC trip is next year's trip, though.
Yeah, everything, yeah.
but it is a recurring expense, of course.
I might go next.
I mean, you can work towards that of trying to identify those items, but if you don't, then that is coming out, right out of your fund balance, which is, we're already, I agree with all the police officers, probably won't happen. That doesn't help us on the expenditure side, help us in the total general fund dollars available to use, absolutely. But the budgeted number still has to land in this budget. So if you think you want to do this July 1, I would much rather, from my sanity perspective, go ahead and let's just put that in there the way you anticipate doing it. And your timing could have adjust based on how much money did we not spend this year? Fine, that
That's
rolls over.
Kind of
Does
what I
that make
was getting
sense?
to, too, yes.
Gotcha, yeah.
Because it's much less work to
Yeah, it
just
doesn't make
do it now.
sense to have you do this big of
And then we work towards finding savings.
Just so I understand, so the budget year we're in right now, Larry and Pat are not going to DC, so that's $5,000. We're not spending
This year,
$2,500.
No, that's this year, this and this is next year.
That we have in this year's budget for the commemorative item. So that's $7,500.
right, so it's rolling back into general fund, which will cushion how much I'm coming into the year will be higher by that amount. So at the end of the day, I'm focused on what that percentage of fund balance based on expenditures, right? So I'm already planning to use 2.5 million. So it could be a little higher than that if my beginning balance is a little higher. So if you have significant savings this year in the general government section, I'd rather have the expense in there so we can offset that piece and then whatever you don't spend next year. Yes, that's how you avoid the levy part of it, but it's banking on savings. So
Gotcha. So,
So put it in.
Everybody understands that?
So we would put in the 80.
Put in 60.
No, oh, 60.
yeah, it's just spread amongst, whenever there's a position that's requested and not actually funded, I just lump it all up in the salaries line. That represents all the benefits. I don't mess with every single line so that it's easier to take in and out, honestly. So we will restructure that. The net effect would be about the 60, yes, that we would run it through. And it would show up in the correct areas, so it's not all salary. There's hypers and FICA and all that stuff.
got it.
Any other questions on that?
That was fun. Okay.
Then
Got a warped sense of
I'm just trying to make sure, so we would get a marketing person.
July.
The position would be budgeted in July, and if you're looking for the savings, the position may not be filled until September, October.
Okay.
So it's in the fiscal year, but depending upon where we stand on that, so it gives you the greatest amount of flexibility. It's identified for that. And we've done that with a number of positions, is that we've looked at it and says it's authorized, and for whatever reason, market's lousy, whatever it is, that we may not hire that person immediately in July. And also one of the things that one of the things that you want to do, and I think Bridget alluded to it on Saturday, is that what does he want this person to do? And quite honestly, when I looked at the original request for this, and as I look at all the requests, I look for justification for that. And quite honestly, there wasn't a significant outline of responsibilities and what that person's going to do. So that gives the director the opportunity to provide a really comprehensive program, because we're going to be hiring a person and we're going to be looking at what it is we want to do. You could time up with your strategic plan too. Is that
I
what
mean,
you
that-
folks wanted to do is versus, and again, I want to be fair to this process, is that when it was presented to me is that, the council may want to have more things done. Okay, what are they? You know, and that's what I look at when I want to be fair to the entire process and to everybody that I look at when they presented a budget. And so there was limited clarity to it. And so I would suggest that we have, you know, specifics, you know, some clarity to this. So again, addressing what you folks want to do, addressing what Derek might see as what we're not being able to do with his time and energy at this point in time.
Okay. So we're going to budget the extra and then say, we're going to have that conversation. What's the plan? Yep, we feel good about it. Let's put the position out there.
I think that's a prudent way to do it. I mean, you know, again, it is, you have the money budgeted, it's allocated, ready to go, and depending upon, again, all those moving parts we just talked about when it comes together.
Okay.
Does that sound like a plan, folks? All right. Anything else there? $100,000 in contingency. Debt service.
Yep.
We borrow money, we pay it off. Employee benefit levy.
Yep.
Option sales tax.
Keep moving.
Keep moving. Building maintenance fund.
It's where the solar, that 35 plan comes from, or that 35K plan comes from?
The building maintenance fund, yes. The one you talked about, getting the outside, yes.
Yep, okay, sounds good.
And that we can do
What
with
was
no
the-
increase in the levy.
Right, this is internal service fund.
Okay.
What was the amount that we?
They put in 35.
I had 35
35?
in my
Okay.
notes.
Yeah, which
Did
is
not have
probably
that
pretty
written.
reasonable for
That's,
that
I think
one.
that's a number that they generated and gave to you folks on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that was on the slide.
Okay.
I
So
kind of
that's
wanted to
getting
add
in
one
then.
piece of scope of work to that, but I don't think it'll blow up the 35.
We can talk later.
Yeah.
Anything else, building maintenance? I believe that Nicholas got back to you
Yes.
on the,
Confusion.
thank you.
Yep.
Fleet management fund.
Good.
I think one of the questions we had there that Mr. Stovey mentioned, that they're exploring the option and opportunity with the city of Clive for when they roll their trucks down the hill, I think his comment was.
Great.
We had discussion internally, there's some work to do about how we're going to invoice and how we're going to account for that. So that's a challenge for those guys down there with their system. So they have the capacity, we have to be able to accurately bill.
We can't be like furry friends.
Can't be like furry friends, thank you. We're not going to wait a year to go to Clive and say, oh, by the way, 75,000 in 10s and 20s, please. That will not work. Okay, I'm at the end of my budget book. Did I miss something?
I have a couple more.
Oops, I'm sorry.
So the last one that we hadn't, sorry, I missed it in the Public Works. Douglas Avenue urbanization is the other one that's going to come up for public hearing. The 86 to Elm project will come up, it's on the February 20th meeting. So that one too will need to be accepted prior. Questions, comments, concerns about accepting the bids when they come through? I mean, it still comes to you, obviously, but
We're cool.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I also have a discussion on the MLK Veterans Presidents
Oh, yes.
Days per. We have the cost estimate for that. It's just shy of $32,000 per holiday added. This represents the shift staff. This is the maximum dollars. We took the highest rate of current staff in each of the positions, who's on call, or how many are staffed per shift, fire, police, and then the comp time addition that's paid out. So this is assuming they actually paid it all out. So this should be a maximum, pretty comfortable. Usually they don't even have to fully staff if they have, if somebody is on vacation or whatever, they're not there, they don't have to cover every single one, but to cover minimum staffing, this is what that is.
Yeah.
So that's your cost per, it's true dollars, but in the grand scheme of things, not a huge number. It only affects the shift personnel that are on 24/7.
So where does that money come from if we wanted to add those 2 vacation days?
Effectively, this is probably one that would be, it would shift down into the overtime budget. This is just the potential impact, so I don't know that we would actually change it per se. This is just what the maximum exposure would be. There's no guarantee that we would actually pay all of this.
So we don't have to make any budget changes?
I don't think so.
Well, then I would like us to offer MLK and Veterans Day as city holidays.
Which I think that would align us with the state holiday schedule, so, which works out better.
Yeah, I don't know that she put the state schedule in there, the comparisons with other cities.
Just ask Louisita, since she's a state
Oh,
employee.
okay, yeah. I think the state does get Vets Day, and I know they get MLK Day
Yeah,
off.
they do.
So
I get Columbus Day.
They don't
Somebody
get
I don't think Columbus is
Nobody.
as popular as it
No.
used to be.
President's Day?
They don't get that
They don't
either.
get that either? Okay. Usually it's one or the other on MLK
So
or
you're
President's.
looking at MLK Day and
Vets
Vets
Day.
Day for beginning, because we can capture them both in the new fiscal year.
Yes.
I think that's fair.
MLK and Vets.
Yeah, I'd like to see a hand. See-
Before the end of it, AJ's gonna stick around another year.
Just
tell
so
you
we
what.
can get those 2 days.
I'm going to give you the number of Christie. And you talk to her.
It's one more paid holiday.
No.
He's about to get a lot of paid holidays here.
I'm sorry?
So you're about to get a lot of paid holidays here.
Yeah, that's the discussion for another day. We'll keep that.
All right. Anything else we need to cover?
That's it. Nikki, do you have anything else on your list for financial impact?
Any other budgetary things on yours?
Nope. We'll get back to you with our list of non-budgetary items for you, the things you discussed tonight and previously. And you'll get a chance, one chance only, to make adjustments, because then we'll start. No, you can make adjustments to that, and if we've missed something, please let us know. I think.
Do you all want a revised copy of, with the changes that we made? Otherwise,
Yeah, you'll just flip pages, won't you?
well, normally we would have done the slipping in the pages of this one because some of these changes, so when we change bodies and stuff, that reallocates how the group insurance gets allocated. So it's going to touch pretty much all of this.
Okay.
So otherwise, there'll be a nice clean copy for when we have the hearings, for sure. But do you want it ahead of time? Because we'll effectively have to change your whole book.
I just want it electronically.
Yeah.
Okay, so when that gets ready, so that'll be in place for the March,
Get your calendar out.
the special meeting on April 2nd, because we'll set the date for the public hearing on the levy amount, that fun page that I showed you last time on February 20th. But we won't actually have the book out for public consumption until that truth and taxation. So early March, so about 3 weeks. Is that okay?
If it's digital and we know which pages changed. Is that possible? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Yeah.
Anywhere that has, every page that has people, because we're adding positions, that, it's the same total, it just redistributes it amongst however many full-time bodies I have. That's what changes.
So just when will the budget be available for the public to?
We have to set our levy stuff March 5th, from what we send up to the county so that they can send out their statements. So I would say March 5th is my drop dead that I have to have it done anyway.
Okay.
Because effectively, the budget's done. I mean, we have these public hearings. It's not like we can change much after that anyway. So even though we don't act on it until the end of April, I still have to be done by March 5th. So hopefully a little before that, but that's my,
So you would release the budget
It'll be
prior
post-
to March 5th?
yes, by March 5th is my legal
March 5th, yes.
requirement. Yes, hopefully before that, but since we have to do the change and then our little up and down arrows changes, that rolls to we have to recheck all the rounding on that, so.
Yes, and you'll get a clean copy, and, but yes, we'll get that out, and we'll manage that between the move, too.
Yes,
You're
next
moving?
week, half of our department will move over at the end of next week.
No,
It's,
no.
if you want to walk over there afterwards, I'm happy to walk you through it.
Yeah.
It's not very exciting right now.
Empty room, empty room, empty room.
All right.